Rogers and Damon Benning.
Like I said, just taking it one game at a time. For me personally, in conference tournaments, I've always played in the conference championship, made the conference championship, and so I guess I know that feeling and what it takes to go out and win a few games in a row, and it's all just staying in the moment and taking it one by one.
Again, I think the biggest thing, we just need to go out and worry about Minnesota right now. And, you go out, I don't know, Sam. I mean, I'm not worried about it. I'm just worried about hopefully going out and competing tomorrow night.
Sam Griesel, Fred Hoiberg before the Big Ten Conference Tournament. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. A new voice. Normally, at least over the past 5 days, you've heard Damon Benning kind of stumble his way into the show, be like, hey, I'm here.
Did this dude say stumble? Did he say stumble? Passive aggressive already?
No.
I wasn't listening.
No.
Yeah, me neither.
No, the babysitter's back is just what I'm saying. The babysitter is back. We're here to keep DB in check. Although Robbie Lula did a great job filling in. I appreciate him a ton. I know you guys appreciate him a ton too. And I thought he did a tremendous job.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
Stepping up. Kind of on short notice, really on short notice at the beginning of last week, or at the back end of last week. But he filled the shoes nicely. But we are back. I am off the mend. That's what you were saying, right?
Yeah.
On the mend.
On the mend.
I've never said that in a sentence, which is, as I was listening to Matt Rule's press conference on Monday too, I never said half the stuff he says in a sentence before. I kind of joked with you. I said, it's kind of like reading a book with him. It's a bunch of words I would never say in conversation, but it always makes me feel like a smarter person when I hear them because it makes me look things up.
He's mastered the art. He's an orator.
I had to look up who Socrates was.
Stop.
No, I had to look up the Socratic method because I'm like, who did Socrates teach? Do you know who he taught?
Yeah, well,
one known as Plato.
Yeah, pretty historic. Couple of smart,
not much of a history buff over
couple
here.
Of smart guys. Are you a philosopher?
You know what?
Yes,
It is a very good thing that I have my phone on standby that I can be like, man, he just mentioned the Socratic method. That was like really intelligent.
I chuckled right away. There was so much in there. I'm still just kind of going back over it in my head. He's an interesting guy, and now everybody's starting to experience what I always question myself, what I've been questioning myself about since he's been here. Is this guy for real? Yeah, the more you hear him, the more you do. You do those little mental checks and balances. You're like, man, come on.
You guys had a great interview with
Dr. Elsa?
With Dr. Elsa on
Yeah, she
Friday.
was unreal.
And I listened back to the one with Jessica Cootie as well. But, even to answer those questions more, like, is he for real? Like, she said it again. Like, she reiterated, as the rest of the coaches have. Under that rule.
I'm trying to figure out ways to ask the questions without being offensive. But I think it's what people want to know. It's certainly what I want to know. And so I'm like, I'm asking.
But you have a right to ask.
You know what I mean? It's just like,
and
we got to get behind the scenes here, because there's clearly something about it.
But you don't just talk the talk here.
Well,
like he
again,
walks the talk.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, model behavior is a big deal, man. Like I can't stress that enough. I think my buddy Aaron Sim, I got a good buddy who actually coincidentally I met via a message board. He's been my buddy since about 2005 maybe. And he always used to say, I see better than I hear. And what he was really telling me is
he didn't believe in Santa.
Put your money where your mouth is. Like, do it. Do it. I want to see these guys do it. I want to see it on paper, or I want to more than just see it on paper. Like, I know you tell me you can say anything, but can you do it? And so I've kind of adopted that motto, man. I see a lot, even though I see like trash and I hear pretty legit. I'm a better believer once I see it.
You're looking at me and you're like, hey, I see trash in you after.
Oh man, I can't see that kind of stuff. I'm on from that. That was like a full 3 minutes ago.
Sometimes you tie it back in without me knowing.
Later on, yeah. I mean, it depends. I keep receipts.
I stay vigilant.
I definitely keep receipts. As one of our state senators found out yesterday over text, I keep receipts.
Interesting.
Oh, it was a sidebar conversation. He was Senator Justin Wayne was quoted, as he says, misquoted. Was making jokes. Wasn't all that funny. Pretty disingenuous, and not a lot of truth to it. So we had those conversations. I was like, we could do this publicly. We could do it privately. But
you're more of a private guy.
I am, but I gave him the opportunity. I said, hey, listen, we can do this one of two ways. And since I do keep receipts, I went back from like 2008 and was like, hey, are you this guy? Were you this guy? Were you this guy? Were you this guy? Were you this guy? Oh, and that guy that did that.
Do you just have all of these in your notes?
Oh, I'm passionate about it. I'm passionate about public schools. I'm passionate about special education. I'm passionate about funding. And so it was in my wheelhouse.
Are receipts up here or are they on there?
They're on here too, because he and I had some lengthy conversations.
Got it. Okay.
I mean, lengthy. This goes back to when he was on the school board.
Sure.
So,
man, it's tough to be a school board member.
Yeah.
It's a tough job.
Listen,
I would venture to say that you are more times than not hated in that role than you are loved.
It's hard to be appreciated for having to get down in the weeds. And, if you're representing one of the largest school district in the state, I mean, you're representing, 50,000 students.
But in that role, I mean, it's kind of like the role of the president. Like,
never had dinner with the president.
Never had dinner with more times than not, you are going to get ridiculed more than you are going to get praised.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
I mean, it's that position of power.
Kind of like this job.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said you stumbled.
I'm sorry.
I thought you did a great job.
Sorry.
As a number one, I thought you did a great job.
I don't need your validation.
I'm just telling you.
On.
Well, I don't know.
I'm pretty good at what I do.
There he is.
Here he is. You know what I mean? Like, I'm over that. I don't know why you keep revisiting it.
Well, it's team commitment week.
Is that? Yeah.
I want to be committed to our team. I would put you on my back and run you.
You know what I wanted to ask
to the other.
Because he dropped the line "too cool for school." Some of that stuff at that age, I don't think I would want to do.
Sometimes some guys can be too cool for school. These guys weren't. They wanted to do this.
You know what? I'm being 100% honest. At 18 years old, I don't want another dude's feet on my shoulders, and I don't want to make some caterpillar to do push-ups.
There are a lot of people that don't like icebreakers.
Do you know what I mean?
Building games.
Oh, listen.
Yeah, no, sure.
I'm out. I'm in the corner, and I'm not antisocial. I just, I want to be able to know and see what the end game is.
But I'll tell you what, this isn't the first time I've heard this year already that they're turning work into game, as in like competition within one another. They're playing games against one another. It's not the first time I've heard that. So it seems this group likes to compete in that style.
Shame on me. I'm going to Google it real quick. It is. So we have, we talk about Wizard Wednesdays and stuff all the time at Westside. Dr. Morvek is amazing. So good that we devote, an hour without being on the field during the course of the week to his wizardry. We call him the wizard. He talks about this.
That's what I call Ozzie Smith.
He talks about this deal called gamification, where regardless of what you do, it's the application of typical elements of game playing, i.e., point scoring competition with others within rules of play. So it's kind of low key what you and I will do, right? You'll say something, or I'll say something, or you'll do something, and I'll do something. I'll be like, "There's no way that's true. Want to bet? Let's keep score. And somehow we'll make a competition out of it." That whole gamification thing is, as I'm thinking about it, and he started to give it words a couple years ago when we first really getting into this mental stuff. I'm like, man, deep down, I kind of do that with everything. I really do, right? Immediately, like if we want to keep harping on who's on the show and who's not, I remember immediately, even though it was short notice, I was like, we got to figure out how to make this work. And at one point, I thought we were going to scramble for a co-host. So I was like, let's make a game of it. Like, I'm not going to give in. Or managing the kid's schedule. I'll find a way to get this done. We're going to figure out how
that is a father mentality.
So that's and I'm just not gonna fret. Like, yeah, well,
don't let it run you.
And sometimes it drives it. Well, a lot of times it probably drives Jay crazy. We should bring issues home from school and or whatever, and we're gonna sit down and we're gonna figure it out. All right. And you know me, hey, what's the desired outcome? I talked to a student yesterday over the phone. Hey, what's the end game here? Like, what did you want the outcome to be? All right, then let's back up. Okay. How'd you react? Because only one of those things you can control. So let's start there. I mean, the whole gamification thing, but I just don't think at that age, I don't know how much fun I would have been. And I'm ultra competitive.
Is that because you are so structured internally? Because when you put work into the sport, not just life, because when you said you kind of do it in life, like, hey, do you want to bet on that? But in the sport itself, that was your job, your identity at the time. Is that why you didn't want to make it an act? You wanted to make it you? I don't know what you call it. You may know after I describe it. I'm one of those people, as you've seen, whether it's taking pictures, whether it's icebreakers, whether it's whatever. I don't really want to do it. Well, in high school, I remember doing that all the time.
In high school, I was even worse. Now, I'll be fine probably once I do it, but I'll probably fight you tooth and nail to do it. So I don't know what you call those people, like, oh, he'll be fine. Just do it. I don't know why we're going through the formalities. I'm one of those guys that if it doesn't make sense initially or it's not super practical, even though there could be some outcome.
I think it's an image thing a lot.
Maybe
because you don't want to be looked at, whether it's by your brothers in this case, especially in college. For me, in fraternity life, we did team building a lot all the time, but it was kind of expected in those activities. But going back to high school, when you sat in a room with freshmen, right, and you're sitting in a circle and they're like, hey, tell us something interesting about yourself, and you're like, okay, how I'm trying to fit in with the so-called popular crowd. I don't want to be pulled into this group of people. And
my dumb butt would have said,
go ahead.
Well, just because it's interesting to me doesn't mean it's interesting to them.
Yeah,
I'm not telling them anything.
That doesn't shock me one bit.
Right? That's how I would think. Like, if I'm gonna have to do fireman's carries, or I'm gonna have to get on a caterpillar, make a caterpillar and do push-ups or whatever, I want to know what's the point.
But I'll tell you what, when I grew up, games were the best form of competition for me. Yeah. But I think it's a personality trait, right? I mean, we used to do this game called Power Finesse in soccer, where you would get a ball that's a one-timer to you. You put it in the back of the net. You're safe on one. You put two in, you can eliminate somebody. The second one comes on a volley. I always competed more in that than I did in a skill drill. And that's just because that's I wanted to play for something. I wanted to compete for something. But not everybody's like that.
Yeah. I mean, and it's just interesting how we were having a conversation. I told you, Coach Rule, like I think he truly loves football. Like he
Oh, there's
loves,
no question.
right?
There's no question.
But we don't talk about that a lot in terms of a prerequisite for coaches. And the example I gave is we were talking about a game and it was one in which I played in, so I knew, right? And he said, "Hey, let me show you my game notes just from watching this film." I'm looking at it, and it's thing after thing after thing after thing, and I'm looking at 20 personnel, and I'm like, "Oh shoot!" I said, "Man, you know what's funny about that is I love 20 personnel. I don't always love a fullback. Just two backs, no tight end, right? But offset, put them in motion because
offset." Sorry.
Because it's short edges, it's easy to get to the corner. You still have two-back run game. And he just was like, yeah, anything to get me in two-back run game. I'm like, first of all, to take notes on some innocuous game that happened 30 years ago.
How many people would do that?
You have to have an affinity for it. Like it has to be your thing, right? We hear the stories about how he's either waiting in line or he's at some place and he's on his phone watching film. If you're watching people's workouts and their mobility and their range of function, you have to love that kind of stuff. Like you're not going to put any weight on, you're not going to put any maximum weight on the bars for X amount of weeks because you just want to watch me move. You want to watch my mobility, my hip dexterity, like my hip flexion. Like you're just going to watch that and think to yourself. It would be like, you ever had those bosses that say, "Hey, let's go back and listen to this segment." But I hate that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'm like, are you serious? I hate my own voice, but there's something. I fast forward through segments in the car. I remember there used to be commercials come on, I'd turn them down. Kids would laugh, kiki, and I'm like,
Hey, it's you. It's you.
I just, there's a certain, I'm just uncomfortable. But when he talked about accountability and having those conversations, I'm like, man, the sooner you can get that, life will be so much easier, right? Where you could just kind of take some self-inventory. Where am I at? Where am I at in relation to what everybody else is doing? And am I doing the right thing?
Right. Yeah. Early on, I think it's the hard part because
it's brutal.
I remember going through my tapes as a freshman in college the following year, right? Just from freshman to sophomore year. And I'd go back and listen to my freshman tape and be like, did I really just say that? Do I really sound like that? Nowadays, though, it's easier because I've been doing it for 8 years.
I watched. So before the second time, so this is probably about 10 years ago when we moved the first time. Like we still had a VCR. This old man. And I just popped in some of my high school game. That's terrible. I'm like, God, this dude sucks.
Yeah,
like
Damon,
I hated
my. Why'd you do that?
I
Why'd
hated
you make
my
move?
gear. The sleeves were too long. I go back and watch Nebraska. My shoulder pads are too big. Like, I don't like doing any of that. I just, it's like, And so when he's asking guys to do this and to evaluate real time, he goes, we need to figure out how accountable we can be to one another and how much attention to detail can we pay. And I'm like, in college during that stretch of my life, that would suck. But as I think back about it, and Coach Solich would say, hey, man, listen, I want your heels at 7.5, smooth to the hole, press the point of attack. Don't make a move until you have to. That's pretty detailed, right? At the time, you don't really realize it, but I still was the guy, if you run out of bounds and you're in practice, and I told this story, Coach Osborne was like, you're not getting paid enough. You're not that high price. This isn't the NFL. And he showed it over and over and over again of me going out of bounds.
I thought, whoa.
Unnecessarily. I just went out of bounds. This is in practice. Practice.
We're talking about practice, man.
That's how I felt, but I didn't know Iverson then. I was so embarrassed to have him play that clip over and over. I'm like, I get it, man.
And is this just you two in the room, or is
no, we're in our position. This is offensive.
And again,
meetings.
it comes back to image.
Yeah. I mean, people are looking back at me like, I know this dude feels like trash. But guess what we won't do again in practice?
We're
not about to run out of bounds.
Mm-hmm.
We're just,
You're about to run somebody
yeah,
over.
we're not doing that.
Yeah, I'll say this too. I mean, I think what Rule's doing is kind of unique because he's finding a way to separate the winners from the losers.
Oh, how about a starter being Mr. Irrelevant? You think that guy's going to get his bunda in gear?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and he mentioned, he didn't fail to mention either that this is a guy that played last season.
Yeah. And, my favorite was, these guys wanted to pick their teams, and sometimes it was position groups, and they felt like they needed to be a little loyal.
It went away from best friends
then
quickly.
you're about halfway through, and you're like,
I need a big guy.
We need to pick again.
I need a big guy. Hey, can we restart?
Yeah.
I didn't really understand the rules. Let's go to line one. Michigan Lance here to talk team building. Lance, good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, boys.
How you doing?
Andrew, welcome back.
Hey, thanks, dude. I feel better too. So it's all good things.
What's up,
hey, man? Glad you're healthy. Hey, one of the great things about you guys' show is that you guys accept feedback and you go in the lab and you figure it out and then you change if you have to, right?
All right.
And you guys get better. So the show is called Coffee and Cream, right?
Here we
Indeed.
go. Here we go.
So I want to hear more of Coffee and Cream, Andrew and Damon. Listen, I love the guests that you bring on, but I don't want to hear more guests than I do you two. So when Robbie was on yesterday, I'm hearing a lot of Robbie's and Damon's insight on what you guys, what they feel and how they go about things. I want to hear more of that from you, Andrew. Give us more of you, like for instance, you talked about, I know you don't really like the wild card or understand the wild card of Nebraska high school sport.
Right.
Hey, man, go deep dive and go all the way in. Say it's stupid, it's raggedy, it doesn't make sense, like it's the dumbest thing you ever heard. Like, hey, man, give us your real insight, a deeper level of how to go about it and what you figure is the best way to go about it, man. Like, I you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know if I'd say stupid.
Man,
I'm not much of a stupid guy, but I know.
Hey, man, I
know where you're going.
I don't care what you want to call it. You know what I'm saying? I don't care what you call it, man.
I'd say ridiculous.
I don't know what you guys say. It's rigmarole. I don't know, man. But whatever the term you use,
guys.
Oh man.
I mean, like, hey, man, I know you got good stuff. You're a Bears guy. You're my guy. So just give us more of you, man. Raw and uncut, good, bad, or indifferent. The dialogue, especially, you're young, DB's older than Dirk. Like, you know what I mean? That dichotomy, black, white, all that differences. Hey, man, we want to hear that. Hey, you guys are team building like Nebraska football, right?
No doubt.
Like, that's some good stuff that he's implementing, Rule is implementing, because on the basic level is what has to be done to build a program. You're trying to turn losers into winners. And that's what they are. Those players are losers. They haven't won anything. I know that's kind of harsh, but they haven't won anything. They haven't had a winning season. So you're trying to build that. And so when DB's talking about, I kind of want to know the end result. And here's a part of the human element. DB's talking about, DB's a faith guy. But sometimes because he's human, he lacks faith in what the construction of somebody is trying to do. Hey, we're going to do this. Well, it needs to make sense to me. Like, I don't know what's the end result. Like, I'm not trying to do it. But then if you say, hey, DB, hey, man, have faith. Hey, this bill is going to come pay. God's going to come through. He's going to be like, oh, yeah, I'm with you. I got faith. That's the toughness of the complexity of being a human, where, hey, over here I have strong faith, but then over here I'm like, I don't know for sure. What is that? That makes sense. What is that going to do?
You
for
know,
me?
it ultimately
what is the end
boils.
result?
You know, it ultimately boils down to trust, right?
Yep.
So
there you
if,
go.
if it's not a newbie, and I appreciate the call, Lance. If it's somebody that
Yeah,
I think
thanks,
has
brother.
my best interest, that you know this about me because you and I talked about this way back in the summer. Like if I think you're for me, you can tell me whatever you want to. DB, zip it. DB, you talk too much. DB, I don't understand this. You could tell me whatever, and I'm be like, oh, cool, man, I got you. But if I don't know, I'm be like, what? What? Hey, rigmarole. See if you can weave that in the rest of the show.
Lance,
Who
appreciate
says
the feedback, man.
rigmarole?
Hey, more CNC next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Hey, welcome back. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. He's Damon Benning. I'm Andrew Rogers, and I'm happy to be back on the show, and I'm happy to have you here with us as well. You know, I was joking with Shane, though, coming in. I'm like,
Hey,
that's what DB said walking through the doors today.
Dude's been out of control.
When is he not?
Like a huge waste of time.
Out of control.
I think it all started with your Collide song. Like from that point, it is continued to spiral downhill.
It's been all downhill from there.
Hey.
Collide. It's a song.
Yep, that one. That dropped.
You're an idiot. Stop lying.
Wow.
Wait, what?
Name calling.
What?
Blinded
Most people
by
don't
the
take that
light.
personal.
That too.
But what do you mean? Blinded by the light. What was that about?
I don't know. Isn't it?
That is not true.
I mean, it's pretty believable.
Unbelievable.
Yet believable.
I'm over this dude.
No, I told him though. I said you guys are going to be without me for 5 days a month from now, because I have to go to that destination wedding in the Dominican. I have to go.
Wait,
I get to go
When's that?
back into April.
Back end of April?
Yeah, it's the same weekend as the spring game, of course. Swear
Who
to God.
does that?
Swear to God.
Ruru Rogers. That's who does that.
The best- I'm the best man.
WWBD.
He would
bet
have
he
the
would
trip planned
stay
2
his.
years
No,
out.
yeah, I bet this dude would stay his hardworking butt in town and be like, "Hey,
Man,
I'm trying to provide for the fam."
could
That's
not predict
that's
it.
what Barry.
I'm
would
at that
do.
age, man. Weddings are taking over my life, even my own.
We'll talk about that off air.
Even my own.
I saw her every day. She was in here working
She said
And I-
you
and I
guys
asked her
constantly asked about me.
every day.
Yeah, you guys are great. You
Well,
guys, you guys are my people.
Listen, I care.
You guys are my people.
I care.
I know it's not an act.
I
God
care.
no. I know
Yeah.
it's not an act. Not
Oh,
one
but
bit.
because believe me, if I didn't, I wouldn't.
Yeah, I know.
I keep
You
it
would have
pushing.
kept your mouth shut. You'd have been, whatever. He's
You
gone."
you already know. I don't want to be held accountable for any lies.
Hey, do you guys
I
have
did
any-
that once.
You guys have any poll questions while I was gone? by
No,
chance?
not a one.
Not a one. All right. Here's our poll question today.
No big deal. I feel like you low key kind of subliminally make me invest in poll questions. I don't like poll questions. But every time
I
I'm
started
around
them.
you,
I got you back
we get into poll questions. I used to make fun of shows
You know
that
why?
always did poll
Because
questions.
because it's a game. Anything that is a game turns
Gamification.
into competition. right?
Shout out Dr. Morvek.
No, in order to get my details across, I like to play games. I like to
Listen.
have segments. Those are my favorite.
I challenge you. We're gonna bring him on the show. Talk to this dude 10 minutes, and you'll feel like you've been profiled. Unequivocally.
Hotch. Sorry.
Listen, that he's
I'm
my.
not sorry.
No, he's actually my second favorite. I'm Team Gideon.
Yep.
Hotch is a dude. Hotch has a lot of my personality. A lot of
Okay, who are you bringing on the show?
Dr. Morvek. We're going to talk about competitiveness, gamification, trust. He's the man. Gentle spirit too. I'll let him go into his old job, but he's big time and smart, dude. He's the type of guy you leave a conversation with, and you're like, I said 7 things, and he knows everything about me. Oh, poop.
Okay. I don't know if I want to meet this guy.
Dude, it's kind
Hey,
of.
if I can leave the room smarter, though, surround
I'm-
yourself with smarter people.
I'm
You will
telling
be a
you,
better
man.
person.
I'm telling you. There's a reason we play well in the fourth quarter and third quarters. There this is. It's a lot.
A really good defensive coordinator.
No, it's more about our mental approach. Yeah, it is. It is.
You got to have it right upstairs,
Yeah.
especially in high school. Especially in high school, you have to be ready for those moments. You have to be mentally strong. It's an age too where you have to learn quickly.
Yeah.
Hey, our poll question today: how many wins does Nebraska pick up in the Big Ten tournament? I heard you guys last week kind of set an over/under with Creighton
Dude,
and
did you like
Nebraska.
those 6-packs?
Oh man,
Hey, I was like, this is kind of hard, but I could maybe do this once a month.
well, it's gonna have to be a twice a week thing now. They sold 6-pack twice.
Well, how come they keep making all the money? Huh?
I don't know.
Duh, you know what's funny?
We'll get
You know-
rewarded.
you know
We'll get
what's-
rewarded.
You know what's funny about that though?
Go.
I could ask Chris or Sasha for anything, and they'd be like, "We got you." So I'm
Mhm.
not gonna cry about that,
Speaking of, we have more beer courtesy of Zipline
dude.
waiting for us.
Chris is a dude. He's kind of awkward in his style, you know, but
CG,
yeah, dude, get stuff done.
no doubt.
May break a few flower petals, but I like it.
And what I've learned quickly from Chris is he's not afraid to just say it.
Yeah,
he doesn't
so
beat around the bush.
The only time I've been mad at him in these last however many months is because my feelings were hurt because I didn't think he went to bat for me. That's how, you know what I mean? Like, is there anything more DB than that? You're such a baby. Listen, I know, man, I am. I know
Aren't you the
I'm-
youngest?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's why you're a baby.
and I'm a Pisces.
Wah,
Wow, really?
wah.
So what's the sign for Richard Head?
Me.
Aquarius.
Uh,
We even set the lineup, and we got to read the poll
no,
question.
Poll question. I read
We
it.
got coaches
Didn't get
coming
the
up.
options yet. How many wins does Nebraska pick up at the Big Ten tournament? 0, 1, 2, or 3+. You can go ahead and vote at H Varsity Radio. Big game today against Minnesota. They aren't playing themselves.
Coming up, Coach Edson Miller, head Mustang, and Coach Woodard.
State basketball is this weekend.
Why did we pick those two, Ruru?
Because of the 1 and 2.
And they
And
represented
the
bulk of the finals.
past 4 years.
We're gonna get that out of the way. It tips off though with a doozy with Wahoo and Auburn. You talk about contrasting styles. Marcus Glock and Benji Nelson with Coach Sheaf going against Coach Weeks and Auburn, who Matt Binder and company, where they score about 30 points a game. Wahoo would like to have that in a quarter and a half. So something we'll give at 9. We'll be watching on our NFHS account. Thank you, Jesus, for that.
No doubt.
I
said no doubt 3 times. I gotta stop saying that.
the band.
No, I just out loud.
I totally. So one of the 6-pack of questions. The line was -1.5 for wins in conference tourney play. Creighton favored by 1.5 games won over Nebraska. What would you have taken?
I would take Creighton. No, let me see. The -1.5.
That means
So
they got to
would
go
have to-
+2 in the conference win tournament.
+2. So you beat who? Villanova most likely,
Yeah.
and then you beat.
You got to probably a better draw in the second round. I mean, they got to be playing in the championship. And Nebraska has to beat Minnesota.
Who's your second round draw? Xavier?
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, I think Nebraska could lose today and still cover that line. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I could
What?
could see
Oh, ye of little faith, you're not alone. Robbie claimed to have PTSD from being traumatized from Villanova the last time. He's not buying it either. What happened to Jays fans where, and I wouldn't necessarily consider you a fan. You're fairly objective.
Mhm.
But where'd we get off the boat? I think they win the Big East tournament.
Yeah. And
I'm the last thing from a homer.
I just don't know how well they can shoot the ball.
Oh, man, they'll figure it out.
I've been saying that all year. All year, Creighton can figure it out. And then all of a sudden, I see Baylor Shireman shoot 2 of 11 from 3.
Yeah.
And I see Trey Alexander go spotty. And I see Arthur Kaluma go spotty. And I see two players have really good games. Nemhard, who could probably end up with 17, and then Kalkbrenner, who has 8 field goal
He did
attempts.
get 12 shots the other day.
And
did you see that? 8 of 12?
Unbelievable. Thank goodness they get to do that against teams in the bottom half of the Big East. I'll tell you this.
All right, so your guns, I'm telling you, man. And I know I jinxed them when I said they'd run the table. I said 6-0. They went 4-2. That wasn't very good. Wait, 3-3 maybe. Was it 4-2? I gotta look at that real quick. They're gonna win the Big East tournament. They're the worst team. So this is the contrarian opinions, right? Not enough depth. 3 games in 3 days. Their depth will be fine. It will force Coach Max Hand, Coach Huss, those guys. They'll be fine. You know what makes them difficult? Who's going to be the leading scorer? Somebody different every time out. They're hard to prepare.
They are hard to prepare for.
3,
and you can't drive the ball inside.
Nah, give me the Jays.
See, it's hard to beat a team 3 times in a season, which is why I think Nebraska has their work cut out for them today.
Oh, against
Minnesota.
Minnesota that played against Wisconsin.
We'll get into that.
Honorable mention on Big Ten, Chucky Hepburn. We'll speak to his coach in the next segment. But
Correct.
First, we're gonna try to corral some Mustangs. Coach X.
High school basketball next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Hey, welcome back to the show, 888-638-4876. If you'd like to get involved at any time, Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. We're live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. He's Damon Benning. I'm Andrew Rogers, and now it's time to talk high school basketball, in particular state basketball, as that gets underway today. Runs March 8th through March 11th. DB is already rubbing his hands together like he's starting the fire.
Yeah, spent a lot of time in Lincoln this last week.
And we are talking to two of the main powerhouse coaches, at least in recent years.
They played a lot of finals.
In Class A. First on the docket is Coach Etzel Miller, from Millard North. And Coach, first off, good morning. Welcome to the show. How you doing?
Good morning. Good. Great. Very excited for the day. It's kind of feels like it's been a long time coming. So we're glad since our district championship that we're ready to get on the floor again.
Coach, there's something to pedigree. In the last 9 years, Prep 199-42 with 2 titles. Bellevue West 195-45 with 1 title. Millard North 154-72 with 2 titles. No pressure. You got to embrace that, don't you? I mean, that is an elite crew over the last 9 years.
Yeah, I didn't realize what it was the last 9 years, but a lot of people have talked about maybe our recent success the last few years, but what we've really been talking to our kids is this is their time, this is their opportunity. So when an opportunity comes, we got to make sure that we take advantage of it.
Coach, obviously one game at a time, but this isn't your first rodeo. Knowing every opponent in the remaining 8 is priority 2. What do you make of your path to the final, possibly seeing the team that got the wild card, most likely facing the opponent you've seen the past 3 years, and they're perfect? What do you make of your path?
Yeah, I mean, I think we feel good about the draw. I think anytime you come down, who lays in your path to the championship game is always a big factor. I'm not going to lie to you. When Bell West has to play Prep into three overtimes, that played into our favor.
Yeah.
You never know what game could be a major factor. Whether it's us and Elkhorn South, running into the next opponent. But it is nice to have, played almost everybody in the field and being comfortable with, who guys are and not having to, reinvent the scouting report. You pull it up, everything looks the same. You tweak it here and there, and you go about the next game.
Coach, you want to control what you do. You make it about you. That's what good programs do. But if we take a look at the opponent and Coach Zunbrennan and Elkhorn South, you're going to get maximum effort. 32 minutes of whatever's in their fuel tank you're getting. Does that change the methodology in terms of practice, prep, or how do you look at the psychological versus the physical, knowing you could potentially play 3 and 4?
Right. Yeah. We've talked a lot about their crew and how hard they work. Their guards rebounded extremely well. I think Coach Brennan does a fabulous job with getting the max out of that group. I think we match up with them pretty well. Where our guards, we got some guys that can shoot it and get to the rim, and then at the same time, athletically around the perimeter. But it's going to come down to who's ready to play and who can kind of control their emotions throughout the game. Like you said, Coach Brennan's got his crew playing really hard, really well. It's going to take a good game from our guys to pull out a win.
Coach, keep it right there. You bring in a lot of experience while your counterpart in the quarters brings in a youthful approach. How much do you think that experience will help you and your team in this game opposed to maybe the latter?
Yeah, I'm really hopeful that guys like Eli and Neil will be able to, withhold some of that experience and benefits us. But at the end of the day, we're playing 32 minutes of basketball. And I think, after the first few minutes, some of that stuff wears off, and that's really what we've been stressing to our guys, because other than those two and maybe Derek, a lot of the guys are new and haven't been, part of this, experience. Camden Money played a little bit, but other than that, it's a different team again, and we're going to come down and compete the best that we can, so that we get an opportunity to move on.
I'm glad you mentioned Money. I'm a big Cam Money fan. Every team needs a guy like that is that unselfish, that does a lot of the dirty work and doesn't get recognized for it. I'm a big Money fan. Let me get you out on this, Coach, because you know what I think the world of you as a person, is just as a quality individual, and give you a chance to kind of maybe not brag, but the season couldn't have always been rainbows and butterflies. You won a ton of games, I get that, but new faces and new places, blending with the staff. You got to, fortunately, deal with my main man, Coach Mosser, Coach Mosser, and all his scouts. Like, there was some there has to be a learning curve working with new guys and new kids.
Yeah, it definitely was. Two seniors that come over from other programs and take on new roles, Jacob and Pax. And then we also have another senior, that doesn't play at varsity last year, but plays a lot of minutes JV, is Skylin.
Yeah.
And then Luke Davis is another one that doesn't play a whole lot last year, but was a great force for us on the JV team. And, he stepped up and played some big minutes. So,
hey, he's a tough-minded kid. Well, he sure is. He doesn't give an inch.
Right. And then, some days we kind of just say everybody's got to be ready to, be ready at the right moment. You never know when your chance comes, and step up and take it when it's there. But a mixture of, some other guys from other places. And then, like you said, our staff, I feel very confident with them. Coach Mosser, Andy Hahn, Nick Moyer, and crew, and everybody. We've got freshman coaches that are up here every day, at the end of the season, and, they're not ready to, turn over the tide. So I feel very fortunate with the guys that are there to help me out. And then they do a fabulous job.
Coach Etzel Miller,
best wishes to you, Coach.
Good luck today at 6.
Yep. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, guys.
Let's change gears. We are talking now to the 1 seed in Class A, Coach Doug Woodard out of Bellevue West. Coach, good morning.
Andrew Damon, always good to talk to you, gentlemen.
Coach, good morning, man. Hey, I'm gonna ask, and you can make fun of me. We're close. Are you past the been there, done that? I know you're going to appreciate the run, but man, it's like pencil the T-Birds in to be in Lincoln.
Well, no, it's not. You just don't ever want to get to the point where you don't appreciate it and you take anything for granted, because there's a lot of good teams and there's a lot of good coaches, and it's not an easy deal. And so we appreciate it and just look forward to the opportunity, Damon, in all actuality. So.
Hey, Coach, how much pressure comes with being undefeated at this point, though? Do your guys feel any of that heading into Lincoln?
Lofty resume, no goose egg in the loss column that's one you can go get,
no doubt.
Well, the thing is, we haven't talked about it. We talked about it one time about 2 weeks ago, and because there had been something on one of the news stations that said something about it, so we just thought we'd address it. And the deal is, everybody that's down there now, none of that matters. Everybody wants to be undefeated come Saturday for 3 games, and every team down there's won 3 games in a row. So what you've done up to this point it means nothing. We're not going to win the thing because we're undefeated now, and if we lose, it's not going to be because we're undefeated now. It's going to be because of how we played relative to the people we're playing. This is a neat side deal, but that's all it is.
Battle tested is always relative to the team. Sometimes it's the competitiveness in the practices. Sometimes it's the culture you're in. Sometimes it's actually the games being played. And people make a lot of you guys only being tested down the stretch. You had Miller North 43-42 in the fourth. You obviously went to overtime with Westside. How much does – and we can stay with the overtime game. Was that the right game at the right time to recalibrate you guys? Or I mean, that obviously I saw that one up close. There's some fantastic coaching and cat and mouse and just the temp. There was some championship mentalities in that game, primarily by your point guard, Josiah Dotzler, and the savvy poise of Stuvie. And that game seemed to be at the right time for you.
Well, you know, it's unrealistic to think you're just going to go through and just blow out it. That's ridiculous. I mean, there's good teams. There's well-prepared teams. And to think that you're just going to do that or to assume that's not going to happen. And you're going to get challenged and you might get beat. I mean, it's competitive and that's what it is. And so, yeah, we needed to be pushed, and sometimes you got to give credit to the other guy. Westside played extremely well, and they made some things very difficult on us. So hopefully we learned some stuff from it. We grew a little bit, and we got better, and that's the hope. And I think we've been better down the stretch in practice, and so hopefully we'll see here down in Lincoln.
Coach, if you could describe this in one word and one word only, what makes this Bellevue West team different this year?
One word?
One word. Just give me one word, Coach.
You know, defense.
Yes, great call.
If you're going to limit me, I just
I had to limit you.
But now you got to let me extrapolate on that.
Yeah, go ahead, Coach.
You know, it's not like other teams haven't defended or that we're perfect defensively, but there's a buy-in from all the guys that play that I think they realize that's the carrying card. Because the offense is going to come and go. I don't care how good of a shooter you are, how many good shooters you have. There's going to be nights where it just isn't happening very well at the offensive end. But if you are on the same page and connected to whatever your philosophy is defensively, you're going to give yourself a chance. And I think these guys have bought into that.
Fantastic, Coach. Best wishes until the second round.
Hey,
hopefully
good
we
luck
can get
today.
past East. Thanks,
well,
Coach.
Thank you, gentlemen. It'll be a great tournament. All right. God
Thank
bless
you, Coach.
Thanks.
Absolutely right when you say that. Coach Doug Woodard. When we come back, we'll talk to Brian Christopherson right here on CNC.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning. We'll be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Yeah, this is a fun time of year. And, all the work that we've done to this point, going all the way back to June, this is what you prepare for is postseason opportunity. Conference tournaments are a ton of fun, and I've been a part of cutting down nets on a couple of different occasions. There's nothing like it. Nobody can take that away from you when you do that. It's special for your team. I still am close with a lot of the players, that I had the opportunity to cut nets down with, and it's really exciting for your fan base. And, it really is the time, everything's been a grind up to this point. Now the fun starts in the postseason, and we just need to, again, go out there and focus on the task at hand, not the overall what we need to do, to make the tournament. It's just one game at a time, and hopefully we go out and give ourselves a chance tomorrow.
Coach Fred Hoiberg, before the game tonight, the Big Ten Conference tournament begins today. And, he talks about fun, and that is how I'm going to center my first question to Brian Christopherson as we bring him in now to the show. Brian, good morning.
Good morning, guys. How you doing?
Hi, B.
Good. Hey, so Coach Hoiberg mentions fun, and to some degree, you could say that, you want the fun to outweigh whatever else takes place, the game at hand, right? And when you look at a team like Minnesota, they aren't really playing for much. They have a 1 in gazillion chance of making the NCAA tournament at this point. So they're just playing to finish out the season now, to have some fun down the stretch. But with this Nebraska team, you almost have to kind of balance now the recent stretch of winning with the fun. And you can't just go into it and say like, hey, let's just have some fun now, guys. It doesn't matter what happens. No, it does matter what happens as this team moves forward. How do you think this team balances that fun while also at the same time, what not only the task at hand, but what lies ahead for this team?
Well, I think this is where you hope your good chemistry pays off when you go on a road trip like this. You're with your boys. You like each other. This team has really had sort of that, I think, close connection that has helped it through these various stages of the season where there's been adversity. So I think you can have fun on a trip like this, where you're kind of loose beforehand and all that stuff. But then when it's time to go, what's at stake. And you'd have to say this team's done pretty well at understanding that of late. I mean, they have responded, go within each game. I mean, even the Iowa game, Iowa got up 7 points at one point with about 11 minutes left. And a lot of people watching were probably like, well, that's it. That's where it gets tipped and this game goes the Hawkeyes' way. Nebraska came right back with 5. Wilhelm hits a 3 at one point where you don't expect it from him, and it brings it back to 1 in a key moment. So I think they're a tough bunch. They're plucky. The thing they're going to have to do tonight, though, let's just get to the brass tacks of it. They got to get better on the glass against a big Minnesota lineup. I mean, Minnesota can throw some bigs at you and be a problem. And Nebraska, of course, lost 31-11 in second chance points to Iowa. Derek Walker said, heck, we shouldn't have even won that game if you look at it on paper. So it's got to be a way different outcome on the boards this game.
BC, when you're taking a look at, because it's a dirty word, and I love it just because I know how important it is as a as a player and as a coach, but as you've done this over time with a couple of your job stops, when you hear culture and chemistry, what's that elicit in you?
Initially, it's sort of fighting back the want to eye roll. I think that's a kind of a fan perception of it because, and I understand it, Damon, because around here they've heard about culture with football mostly, for such a long time, and it's better than it was, and this and that, and it becomes one of those things where it's sort of like, okay, I hear about this in March and April, but it doesn't show itself to me when it counts on the scoreboard. I think it's one of those things where that's my initial reaction is sort of like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll believe it when we see it. But yet I know that it's the most important thing, like it's kind of funny that way to me because I think people are very skeptical when they hear people talk about it. And yet they also understand this is what can settle winning and losing in the long run if you sort of build that up within a team. Hoiberg's team has it this year. I mean, they wouldn't be where they are,
Really?
16 and 15, if they didn't have that. And that was a component he talked about even in the summer, like when he would show up, at the press conference up on the 6th floor before the season when he was talking, I love this team and now they're together. And that, what I'm saying, Damon, is I think at that point, people are like, yeah, okay, right, whatever. And guess what? He was right. And what he was talking about then in July and August for his team, September, whatever it was, matters now. And we've seen it in February. So it's everything, even though sometimes we kind of scoff when someone delivers a message that their team might have it or they're working for it. Cause I think we have been, I don't know. We've been had our cart knocked over a few too many times with that. So we're a little worried when we hear it.
We're talking to Brian Christopherson, senior writer for Husker 24/7. Toss him a follow on Twitter at Husker247BC. Brian, there's only 2 teams that have 5 out of their last 6 down the stretch. Only 2 teams that have won 5 out of their last 6. And one of them is Nebraska. How much do you believe in momentum over talent when it comes to overall impact in conference tournament play for a team?
Oh, I mean, I think momentum is something you can really ride, and they have some talent on this team too. Derek Walker's a baller, I mean, he was second team all conference by the coaches for a reason. He's a tough matchup, and he's such a good facilitator and does so many things. I mean, he's a guy a lot of teams wish they could have. Casey, the way he can shoot it and get on a streak, a lot of people wish they had that right now. And Sam Grissel just does all the dirty work. He can sometimes have a stat line. I mean, he had 16 against Iowa, but 14 of those points were in the first half, I believe, and then 2 in the second half. But yeah, he was still having as big an impact in the last 20 minutes with the other stuff he did. So it's not like they don't have anything over there, but it is going to take a tough mental edge this week because I don't know how much they're going to be able to get out of Blaze Cada. And he's one of those guys where you could use him for a couple minutes here and there. You could really use that presence, even if it's like 4 or 5 minutes a game where he pops in and adds that. Will he be able to? I don't know. It sounds kind of iffy. So you're talking about Oleg or somebody kind of needing to step up and give you 3 or 4 minutes. That's going to be huge key, guys, is that like 3 to 4 minute stretches where somebody like Oleg comes in the game and kind of watch that score. Can Nebraska, hold serve there or whatever when they have to go to their bench? Because I think there's a right to be kind of concerned about what the rebounding could look like in this game if Nebraska is not completely dialed in, because Sunday was worrisome in that degree. Even though Nebraska won the game, the way it was just so easy for the Hawkeyes to get second chances. It kind of has me a little uneasy about this matchup tonight because Minnesota, even though they haven't been a good team, they do have some big dudes that they can throw at the 3, 4, 5 and give you some problems.
BC, let me change gears for a little bit, but not fully, with talk of the culture and chemistry. Obviously, Coach Rule took the podium, and I mean, he continues to hit home runs. But as a way to validate kind of the level of how much you believe in what he's saying. Are there times, because this is kind of my litmus test, there are times where I'll listen to what he's saying and I'm like, how often would I apply that to something other than sports, i.e. my household, my place of business, something like that? Do you find yourself listening to him and saying, yeah, that's not just football. I'd kind of like to surround I kind of like my work environment or my family or whatever to be like that too.
Yeah, he definitely strikes that chord. I think it's because he talks so much about the accountability aspect of things, right? And I mean, you can apply that to any avenue, and that's why I like what they're doing right now with this team stuff. I mean, some of it is um, has nothing to do with physical prowess or the football stuff. It's just like bonding and being there for your brother, being someone that they can trust, that you're going to show up on time. You're going to do what is asked of you. And you could tell like he was genuinely like impressed. Like Thomas Fidone's team won that first competition, and Fidone was sort of the orchestrator of it, like getting guys, to show up at certain times. Okay, what's our schedule? This and that. And it made an impression, I think, on the coach. And so that they're watching those guys that are you going to do what you say you're going to? Are you going to do something for your teammate, something that's selfless? And so there's a lot of that going on right now, kind of mixed in with the physical tests they're getting, that I think is useful, that you could probably do in other businesses and it would make you successful. Although I probably wouldn't include the part of like trying to carry Teddy Prohaska on my back across the field.
Yeah, that made me hurt just watching.
Seeing that he had to go halfway and then do it again, that made me hurt.
That's 330 some odd pounds of a 6'10" frame.
Yeah, it's a big boy. Hey, I like the gaming style of practice too, BC, and I was telling that to DB off the start. But I want to go back on this because I don't know if it was you that asked the question in the press conference or if it was somebody else, but basically establishing with coach, and you guys were in unison when you said this is year one for everybody. And I almost wonder if that's why they are leading with team building exercises during winter workouts. And I want to ask you, do you think that's the reason? Do you think we're going to see repetition in team building as the years go on under Coach Rule?
Yeah, I think we will. And I think you almost have to across college sports, not just with the current situation in front of us here at Nebraska, because the portal is so busy. Teams are, it's more free agency than it's ever been in college sports. Like, go back to Hoiberg real quick with his team. He'll have to do it a little bit again with a new squad with 3 or 4 key parts, that they'll have to pick up to add to next year's team. And, Rule will probably have the same thing. I don't know that they'll go as portal heavy in the future as they have been this year, but there's always going to be new faces. There's going to be people coming and going. And I think it's always important too, to just get you out of that stance of being in a clique. And that's definitely came across as something that's happening, where it's not going to be a deal where the defensive linemen are at this table and the linebackers are over here, or you're just hanging with your buddy that, you walked on with, or whomever, that you're from the same state as. You're going to get in spots where, like, Thomas Fidone had Chief Borders on his team, a guy from Council Bluffs with a guy from who transferred in from Florida, and I like how they're just mixing everybody up, and they're making people, I think, probably get out of their comfort zone a little bit right now. And hopefully then you get to a point where that's not uncomfortable when it counts, where you just sort of know what that person's about, and have relationships that sort of go beyond the lines. And I do think that can matter when you get to the season and things get kind of tense around here.
BC, on a personal, like my own personal thoughts, like about Thomas Fidone, I've been relatively quiet over the last couple of years, just because I felt like there was a lot of growing up he had to do in terms of understanding that other people matter and there are other people on the football field. As I listen to him now, the level of trust that he appears to have in this staff, and vice versa for them to put him in front of the mic, because as you know, he can be a fantastic soundbite if you just turn him loose. And he seemed to, his self-aware, it seemed there's growth. Like I can hear there's still that, ooh, what's he gonna say? But they turned him loose just to talk about the squad without having any meaningful reps yet. Am I reading too far into that, or you think there's something to that?
No, I think I think it's a cool thing. I think around here that's happened too much in the past where it felt like you had to, with certain coaches, you had to, I get it. You want them to actually do something before they're out in front of the media. But I think sometimes it's useful for a guy to actually get in front of the microphones before that, before we're like in the middle of October and it's after a 35-27 game or something where you're having to answer tough questions and you get called out. I think this is useful for guys this time of year to, you know, we hear from different people, hear what's on their mind, and they also they learn how to do it. They learn how to be in front of the microphone and what it's like in this state where every word you say sort of gets put under the microscope. But back to I'm getting away from your point. I do think I've seen a maturity in him and sort of how he was answering the questions. And you'd expect that, I guess, as a guy goes through a couple of years of college. I just like his the fact that he's had 2 serious injuries and he's not going to let that define him. And that's clear right now. He's like, you know, that has changed the timing on things for me, but it hasn't changed the destination. And I really like that outlook. I think that's a very mature outlook. And yes, he's shooting for the moon and wants to be the Mackey Award winner and all that stuff. And people can think what they want of that. But I'd rather have a guy with that sort of attitude who goes about it that way than the other way. So give me that any day.
BC, you know, speaking of injuries, some would say Hoiberg got lucky with how everything fell into place this year because of how quickly things took a turn for the worst. To some degree, though, you have to settle on luck as a coach. You know, take it from Coach Rule's perspective. How lucky does he have to get with the pieces he's compiled this year to have a season that's successful in Husker fans' eyes?
I always think there's a bit of luck involved with a season with injuries and stuff like that. I mean, even last year's squad, like, you know, when Nuri got suspended before the season and, you know, then Prohaska's injured 3 games or so in, that changes everything. So, I mean, if you avoid a couple of those things at like a key position group where we're sort of asking questions right now, that's going to be a big difference. But the thing is, I don't think that's going to throw them off the process. If they get a couple bad breaks, I just think he's a guy who's just going to be like, okay, what's next? What's the next thing to do tomorrow? You know, with what we have. So, and I think especially in year one, yes, they're going to want to win, but there's not that year 4 or 5 angst, you know, that there is with the coach when he feels like he's got to have 7 or 8 wins that season. It's going to be a little bit different around here just because it's year one. So you hope they do catch some breaks, but I also think he understands this is a long build here. This isn't just something that we're going to, if we have a bad thing happen on a Thursday, we understand that, you know, we can move past that. And there's a lot more ahead. So I don't think he's going to get knocked down too much when there is that injury that pops up, because there will be there. I mean, that's football. You have to deal with that stuff and adversity. And I just don't think that's going to knock him and this staff over.
Well, there's a guy like Eric Gilbert, and we kind of heard that he came in overweight a little bit and working on some fitness. MJ Sherman, there's some guys that came with a few accolades in terms of the transfer portal. When do you allow yourself to speculate or kind of be interested in who we are or who we aren't hearing from?
I mean, I think it'll be a lot of clue searching during the spring, and I would say by the end of spring, you kind of want to know, like, you want to feel like, okay, you're hearing a coach maybe speak on that guy. What I don't know though, Damon, is like how much this staff will be like that. You know, like, are they going to want to get into the individual talk and make that public consumption? or is it going to be stuff they like to kind of keep behind closed doors about how a guy's progressing? So I don't know if we're going to get like the individual updates as much as we want, but I do think if they are doing that, yeah, by like the 10th, 11th, 12th practice of spring, you'd kind of like to hear, yeah, this guy, he's flashing, he's doing this and that. There's this, he's got to put this together, but there's definitely something there. With this year, I think you have to carry some of that into fall camp a bit. But I always think if by the end of spring, you're not hearing a lot from a guy, it can be tough sometimes for that person to put it all together between then and the fall. So I do think this is going to be a critical 15 practices where guys sort who's where in line. And then, it'll be a challenge to kind of rearrange that when you get to August.
We're talking to Brian Christopherson, senior writer for Husker 24/7. Brian, just finished up watching the NFL Combine, and as I watched, it had me thinking about the 2023 class because the ones that were sent from Nebraska came from the transfer portal, opposed to the year removed when you had 4 guys that, started and ended at Nebraska. And now it kind of seems like if you look at who could be next from Nebraska, they would be transfer portal guys. They would be a guy like Eric Gilbert or Ben Scott or MJ Sherman, Jeff Sims, etc. And it has me thinking, are we at a point in time in college sports to where to go to the combine, it's going to be guys that come out of the transfer portal opposed to 4-year guys? And maybe a follow-up to that in regards to Matt Rule and what he's been able to do with producing Sunday players. What's the recommendation to these 2023 recruits to stay the course because he can develop NFL prospects?
Yeah, I don't think we have to believe that that's just the way it's going to be, that it's just going to be guys who had portaled in here and then they were here for a year or so and had success. I don't think Rule wants to ultimately build his program just around that. And he said as much. So yeah, I think he will talk to recruits and say, if you look at his track record at Temple and Baylor, they took a lot of guys from high school that were under the radar, as recruiting sites would probably have it. And they built them into really good college players or pro prospects. And they stuck with guys who sometimes had to, recalculate their route a little bit and all that stuff. So I think it's going to really come down to developing high school guys when it's all said and done. And then you mix in that 1 or 2 special portal players along the way. But yeah, I don't think we should act like last year's template is what's always going to be the template, especially under Rule.
I agree. I think if he had his druthers, it would be what you just described. The bulk of it is through the high school development ranks with the sprinkling in of going to get the special grocery ingredient from the portal.
BC,
go ahead. Sure.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
No, I mean, it's always different that first year too, where you're just like, okay, what's not in this cupboard, and I got to stack some glasses here quick. And so that, I mean, that there's some of that went on, but I don't know if we'll see the exact same numbers portal wise in the future. That's going to be something to track.
Right. Hey, we appreciate your time, BC. Thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of the day. We'll talk again next week.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, B.
That is Brian Christopherson, again, senior writer for Husker 24/7. If you want to toss up a follow on Twitter, it's at Husker247BC. We just finished up talking about the NFL Combine, and we won't continue that portion of it. But at 8:45, we'll talk about franchise tags and NFL quarterbacks, and there's just a lot to kind of unpack with what happened yesterday. So stick around for that segment. We'll have Kevin Sjuts on next. We'll also talk to Mike Grimm at 9:00, Gopher Radio Network football and men's basketball play-by-play. Follow that up at 9:45 with a good friend, Ron Johnson, host of the Ron Johnson Show, DP, and was on that show last week, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah,
Monday, Tuesday. So we're going to bring Ron on because he can kind of dive into a lot of different things, especially, who's going to be the signal caller next year at Minnesota. Will he know? Will he not know? I don't know. I'm going to ask him. We'll find out. 2 for you also at 9:30. That presented by Dingman's Collision Center. If you want to play, stick around at 9:30. But again, coming up next, we have Kevin Sjuts. He is the sports director at 1011 now, and he's got a busy day ahead. We'll talk with him next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Nebraska NIT, there is an outside possibility, and I'll be this guy.
Be that guy.
They could make the NCAA tournament. Laugh all you want.
Oh, still laughing about 2 weeks ago. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers. But who's really laughing? Is it us at Kevin Sjuts saying that? Or is it Kevin Sjuts laughing at the world and still thinking like there is still that outside chance that Nebraska could end up there?
Full disclosure, I was really laughing at the fact he said, "I'll be that guy." He went out on a limb in very typical Kevin Sjuts fashion.
Nebraska NIT, there is an outside possibility, and I'll be this guy.
Kevin, good morning. How are you?
Oh, good morning. Hey, there's still a chance, guys. You win
that's
5
what I was
in
just
5
saying.
days,
Yep.
They make the big dance.
Hey, don't count them out just yet.
I don't even know how many people were believing you when you were talking NIT.
If you look at the way that they had played over the last month, truly, I think it was probably mid-February when they started to get on their run, and Casey started shooting the ball really well, and Walker started to manage the foul situation a little bit better. Like, if this team keeps that up, they're going to make the NIT, and I really think that I truly believe they're going to be playing at Pinnacle Bank Arena next week, guys.
Kevin, where's your mind at, though, right now? Because your mind kind of can go in any which direction. You had Girls State over the weekend. You had Nebraska wrestling. You have Nebraska football with Coach Rule speaking on Monday, along with Fedonian Borders. You have baseball that took place yesterday, which you were there. You have Boys State that is taking place right now. You have that game tonight. I mean, talk about not having to struggle for content at this point in the year.
Where's my mind at? My mind is, I want to be on my couch flipping between all the conference basketball tournaments right now. Or better yet, I don't want to be at Nebraska baseball today because I froze way too much yesterday. I was underdressed, and when the sun went down, the wind picked up, and the game was already done. But it was great to be out at the ballpark, and now we factor in baseball in the mix. And you're right, our job's easy right now. We just have to go gather some video and slap together a pretty fun sportscast every night.
I know they were hitting the ball out of the ballpark yesterday against UNC, but it was thick air, and it was cool. Was it more impressive watching real time balls leave the yard than we maybe just look when we pick up a box score and say, oh, yeah, 4 home runs or whatever the number is?
Well, they all went to left center field.
Even with left-handers, which was telling.
Yeah. I mean, this team can hit. It's the first time I've seen it, and everybody that was there has seen it firsthand, outside of a few folks. I did talk to a couple of guys who went out to San Diego with the team. But yeah, no, they can hit. And those 3 home runs they hit against Northern Colorado yesterday in the home opener, they all went out to left field, and the wind was blowing in, 10 to 15 miles an hour from that direction. So if you thought there were some home runs, and you figured against an opponent like that, they're probably going to leave the yard a few times, but you would have guessed everything would have been toward the right field foul pole. They went straight into the teeth of that wind, and the one Swanson hit, my goodness, off the bat, just sounded so clean, and it was a shot.
Hey, how much attention should we be paying to Max Anderson's start?
Oh, my goodness. What's his batting average up to? He's almost at 600 right now.
I mean, he rakes. Now, we've seen him streaky before. Remember when he first got here? We know what he's capable of, but, man, that thing has to look like a watermelon to him right now.
Yeah, seeing it well, hitting it well. He just has such a smooth swing.
Knows the zone.
Yeah, you know what? We talked to him before they went to Minneapolis last weekend, and, you figured he's going to, not gush over Vanderbilt and Ole Miss, but there might be a feeling of like, we got our work cut out for us. They're just loaded with studs. But he played it the other way. He's like, yeah, we face these guys in the summer all the time. There was no intimidation factor or fear of what the opponent looked like. It was more of a mindset of, yeah, we can hang, we belong. And the other thing about Max is, he's not at third base this year. He's at second.
Yeah.
And I think that has probably taken some of the stress away from the game for him.
A little different body type this year too, Kevin?
Yeah, a little bit trimmer.
Yep.
I think that we maybe underestimated how good his footwork is. He's a pretty good fielder, but he's got really good footwork, and I maybe notice it more now around the bag because he's at second and up the middle.
Kevin, let me ask you about the state tournament now. Let's transition to high school boys basketball. DB and I were talking, and I was in the break just going through the bracket and just tossing out matchups to him. Like, would you pick this team or that team? And I rested around the 4-5s in most classes. But I want to ask you this, and I'm not out here to say that Kevin Sjuts bets on high school basketball. But if Kevin Sjuts was a betting man, and I set the line at 4.5 on if you were to bet the chalk over under on all 6 classes, would you take the over 4.5 that the chalk would win?
Ooh.
Or would you take the under?
Oh man, you're right. That's a great line.
It's a fantastic line because you could convince me, Kevin. Bellevue West, Scott, Ogallala, and Wahoo, and even Free. Oh, that's a great line.
I've looked at the bracket and, put a lot more thought into it than I should, just like you guys probably have. Staring at a high school bracket that has 48 teams on it, you look at it way too long.
That's a good number.
I think there's going to be 4 number 1 seeds that win a state championship. And I think it's A through C2. I don't think North Platte St. Pat's is going to win in class D1 and D2. I can't go against my guys from Parkview Christian. I know they've got a monster first-round game tomorrow against Falls City Sacred Heart. If they clear that,
we were talking about off air. That's the matchup we were talking about off air.
It's the best. It's the best quarterfinal game out of all classes. I really believe that. Even though it's the smallest class, it's D2. There's a storyline there that a lot of people don't know about between Parkview and Doug Goltz. Parkview played Sacred Heart in the state championship 2 years ago, and Goltz got him big.
Yep.
And it was kind of an emotional scene for Parkview Christian. And then guess who they got in the semis last year? Same team. Parkview won, goes on to win the state championship. And here they are. It's those 2 schools again matched up this time in the quarterfinals. That's an awesome game. It's the last game of the night at the Devaney Center, I believe, tomorrow. So of all the games, that's probably the one I'm most looking forward to out of the quarterfinals. And here we are talking about Class D2 when A's about to tip off this afternoon.
Yeah. Well, how good is Auburn and Wahoo in terms of contrasting styles when you look at Sheaf and Coach Weeks? I mean, you talk about oil and water.
Yeah,
but man, is Wahoo electric.
They are. They're not a Class C1 team. They could contend in Class B. I feel confident about that. I'm actually that's where I'm headed right after we're off the phone here, and can't wait to see that one. Coach Sheaf, his teams are so fundamentally sound. Weeks is going to try to slow that game down. That's no surprise.
Yeah.
Auburn played out of their minds in the district final against Lincoln Lutheran, so they've got a little bit of momentum right now. They had a call go against them about a month ago in the regular season. Should have won a game at the buzzer. Bucket didn't count. And I think that's really fueled Auburn's postseason run. But Wahoo with Benji Nelson, a guy that can play above the rim, he's so good. And then it's like the Wahoo teams of old because you have Owen Hancock, Marcus Glock's on that team. He's a pure shooter. Those are some names from years gone by for Wahoo. And they've also had sisters that have starred in various sports at that school. So that is a good matchup. I'm excited to see how it plays out at the Devaney Center.
Listen, I got news for you. Glock's got a little brother that I watched this weekend keep his team in it against my son's team. He will not disappoint either. He may be the best of the bunch. Let me get you out of here on this, Kevin. I've said I think Lincoln East is the best coach team, and not taking the individual staff. I'm just that East plays more as a team. They obviously have West Side. They drilled them a few weeks ago. But Southeast, when clicking, is the most dangerous of the Lincoln teams. Fact or fiction?
Fiction.
You want to think about it?
No.
He didn't bat an eye. He's like, yeah, whatever,
no.
DB. Whatever.
No, I'm still going to ride with Lincoln East on that. I've seen Southeast too much, DB. I think that's part of the problem.
They're so Jekyll and Hyde, but man, are they capable?
I question how much they can sustain playing at a high level. To win state, you got to win 3 games in 4 days. I don't know that Southeast can do that. They could pop a good one against Gretna today. That wouldn't surprise me. But going deep in the tournament, I just don't see it. Bangat Dak's fun to watch, and that's, I think, where you're probably coming from, because there are not many guys with his size in Class A. He creates some problems, but I still think Lincoln East, best coach team. I agree with you there. I think they're the more dangerous team of the Lincoln schools.
Kevin Sjuts, appreciate your time. Thanks so much. Enjoy the day. Busy one ahead.
All right. Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
At Kevin Sjuts on Twitter. Toss him a follow. He's the sports director at 1011 now. Coming up, let's change gears. We'll go to the NFL, talk quarterbacks, franchise tags, and more. Stay with us.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Welcome back to the show. If you're like me, you probably needed a beer last night after seeing everything that went down on the NFL front. And if you drink like me, that means you are drinking. What is it? Oh, I'll tell you what it is. It is an Acres Ale brewed with Nebraska corn, crisp and clean with that light, refreshing flavor. The can is kind of unique, too, a nice silver can. And you know what you're drinking when you have it in your hand. It's light. It's the perfect beer to kind of wash away all of your opinions and thoughts that came from the NFL and to save them for a show like this in the morning. Coffee and Cream here with you, Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers. We are at Hail Varsity Club live from the H&H Chevrolet stage. And DB, just kind of weird, man. You know, I didn't really know how to react to what the Ravens did. I didn't really know how to react to all of the collusion takes that people were throwing out there. I didn't really know how to react to Daniel Jones getting paid.
Now, that one I understand.
But in light of Lamar Jackson not getting paid.
So do you know why I understand Daniel Jones? Because you're going to, if you don't sign Daniel Jones to that deal, and it's the 4-year, it's
a reasonable one.
You lose Barkley.
Right.
So that one makes sense to me in terms of because he's showing signs. Dable's going to be there for the long haul. I think you believe in that combination. I think Giants fans are okay with that. And it's not exorbitant.
Is Daniel Jones a good quarterback, though?
I think with Dable, I think he'll be more than adequate.
He trended in the right direction in his career. But I just don't buy into Daniel Jones. Like if I'm a Giants fan, am I excited about Daniel Jones? Would I be more excited with somebody new?
I think you're excited about the combination with his head coach.
I can side with that. I want to throw these numbers out here though. So Daniel Jones in 2022 had 200 passing yards a game, 6.8 yards per attempt, 15 touchdowns, 5 picks. He had 44 rushing yards per game and had 7 rushing touchdowns. There was a guy in 2016 that did the same exact thing, and he just got completely overlooked back end of his career. And that's a guy by the name of Hurrdat Taylor. So Hurrdat had 201 passing yards per game opposed to the 200 of Jones, 6.9 yards per attempt, 17 touchdowns, 6 picks, 39 rushing yards a game, 6 rushing touchdowns. If people weren't satisfied in Buffalo with Hurrdat Taylor, and I say people, now I'm going to generalize and say the NFL, if they weren't happy with what Hurrdat Taylor put out there, how can you be happy with what Daniel Jones does?
I think the key is the coaching combination, where Daniel Jones is in his career versus where Hurrdat Taylor is, and what people had seen from Hurrdat Taylor as a starter up until that point. I think it's kind of isolated. I think that's kind of stats in a vacuum. I think when you look at the trajectory of taking care of the football for Jones, where he is in his career, and the combination of being with Dable, I think even though the numbers are the same, vastly different scenarios.
I don't know. I just don't. You would think a younger player, yes.
You got the sense with Taylor he'd peaked. You get the sense with Jones he's just starting.
Okay, I can run with that. I can run with that.
Like
for sure.
That's kind of how that's kind of how I look at it. I just look at. I get it. I think fiscally, unlike the Cowboys who franchised Pollard, who will be coming off an injury to pay him in the top echelon of running backs, there were a couple of those. I didn't understand the Josh Jacobs. You didn't want to commit to a new deal. You didn't like the 5th-year option on Jacobs. And then you franchise him. Like, that was so Vegas. How long have I been debating, or not even debating, trying to tell the world why Josh Jacobs you should pick up the option? And you end up
made sense to do it.
You end up franchising him? Like, that's just dysfunctional. But
maybe it's to buy him some more time.
Now, so it's interesting when the NFLPA, and sometimes they can be paranoid, and maybe they need different leadership, and to sit down at the table again. But that's not going to come up for a second with the collective bargaining agreement. But this collusion talk about Lamar Jackson is interesting, and I just wonder how realistically he's thought about not representing himself. Because I don't think people want to deal with that, and I don't think the NFL wants another Deshaun Watson contract. And if that's what Lamar Jackson is doing, maybe the league is saying, hey, listen, guys, if L-Jack calls you, man, don't entertain that guaranteed money. Our quarterback market will never reset. We got a couple of fellas coming up. Hey, this Joe Burrow. Hey, this Lawrence guy. They'll break the fiscal elevator if we start talking about guaranteed money. Are we good? Let's keep all the money that we can in our pockets for these quarterbacks. We don't know what Cleveland was thinking with Deshaun Watson. We're not doing that. Are we good? Yeah. Click.
How do you prove it?
You can't. But it makes complete sense. And
listen, I mean, you would have thought Deshaun Watson reset the market.
It is so wrong
for quarterbacks.
But I understand. Because Deshaun Watson's deal it's not sustainable. And I don't think the league wants to go down that road. And I hate to say I'm saying this because I love Lamar Jackson, and you're getting a Pro Bowler or an MVP, 2 times should have been, before he's 26 years old. I just don't think the market can sustain it.
When was the last time a team said, we're good? You figure out your terms.
What's the franchise number? Was it 33? Is it 33 or 38? It's either 38-3 or 33-8 with the franchise
tag. I think it's
the
lower one.
For the top 5 quarterbacks. But so he can seek other deals. I wonder if he'll back off the guaranteed money.
Well, I think he already has been, at least from analysts out there that have followed the situation.
Gino got 52 guaranteed,
3 years.
But the 52 and a half was guaranteed.
Yep. And Daniel Jones got 80 guaranteed. Yeah. And what did Derek Carr get? He got 60 up front.
Dude, his contract, he continues to win. I got to see the books. I don't have any idea how the Saints are doing it. But Carr's got to have one of the best, outside of Deshaun Watson, Carr's got to have one of the best agents in football.
I just don't understand, even if the NFL comes to you and says, like, if we are going to buy into the collusion talk of like, hey, we have these guys coming up that we're going to have to pay. No, you're not going to have emails, not going to have text messages. People are smarter nowadays. Like, that's not just going to happen. But I just still can't buy that NFL teams are ready to risk it all to get the number 1 pick. Like, the teams that need quarterbacks are ready to risk, their potential future to get the number 1 pick of a complete unknown at quarterback.
But here's the deal,
to represent that path forward.
What's the
opposed to buying in on a 26-year-old MVP?
I'm with you.
For 2 first-rounders and a fully guaranteed deal, if that's how you want to go, or not. I mean, if they're talking about him tossing around that I don't have to be fully guaranteed, do what you do with Daniel Jones.
So now it's become the 2 first-round picks. Shayna, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, what's the difference if your team is already in the dumps?
Well, you're giving up a first-round pick regardless to go number 1.
Here's
right?
the thing, though. So this is what I think the new model should be. If you draft a quarterback and you're getting him on that quarterback-friendly deal, he's got 2 years to prove he's that guy. If not, move on. Go get another quarterback. Because you still have time under that quarterback window and the contract where it's not going to drill.
I'm with you, but is that satisfiable?
Well, hey, man, sometimes I want to date a good-looking girl. I was in school. She didn't like me. Sometimes that's just the way it is.
Yeah, a lot of other times commitment's a good thing. Right? I mean, think about it, because we're talking about those 2 first-round picks, right? So you
know what we don't know, though? I can't imagine they're on great terms.
Oh, I mean, that relationship was destroyed.
You've got a new OC in now.
That relationship was destroyed.
Because now that Monken's in,
but
right?
This was avoidable. That's kind of what I'm getting.
Yeah,
at
but
here.
you can't unring the bell.
No.
So if you want to move
not
forward,
at this point.
So if you want to move forward fiscally, there has to be some common ground. I just wonder how bothered people are by L-Jack being his own representative.
Yeah, I almost wonder if that played mostly into him not getting the contract.
You don't think Lamar Jackson's looking at Kyler Murray's contract and being like, man, come on, man. Like, what are we doing here? This dude hasn't won anything. I'm an MVP.
I'm there.
I'm 26 years old. I'm proven. My team goes to the playoffs every year. Like, what are we talking about? See, so I think the bigger deal is to reset the market for quarterbacks.
Do you think there is
listen,
any
what
chance
are you going to pay Burrow? What are you going to pay Burrow? You better get it done before Burrow.
Do you think there's any chance of salvaging that relationship in Baltimore?
Because
if you think
maybe with a long-term commitment.
If you think so, Baltimore had their chance right there to save that relationship if they wanted to. They basically said, we don't care.
Yeah, I just wish I knew, like, I mean, because if I don't like a guy or a gal, like there's a really good chance I'm probably not sitting down to chop it up. But if I do like you, I'll probably give you the benefit of the doubt. So I don't know, how much milk has been spilt and how much crying there's been. But the market, you almost have to remove Deshaun Watson from the discussion because no one in America is doing that deal again.
No,
ever.
The Haslam family. What were you thinking?
They were desperate.
Oh, desperation can cause a lot of things,
and D. Watt's laughing all the way to the bank with every Monday check deposited.
The next big domino to fall is NFL free agency. That's next week, but we're changing gears. We are talking college hoops next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning. We'll be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Works to the free throw lane, step back, not much there. Backdoor cut to Carr, layup, yes, and a foul. What a pass by Kalsher. And Gabe's showing some stuff. He had like the fake binoculars going. It's a beautiful look. Now to Robbins, a three from straight on, bullseye. Timeout, Wolverines.
And Patino has a timeout, 20 seconds left. Does Carr take the step back three for the win?
He fires a three right now, and he banked it in for the lead. He banked it in with 14 seconds to go.
That's the voice of Mike Grimm, play-by-play for men's basketball over at Minnesota. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. He's the guy we're talking to now. At Mike Grimm 3 on Twitter. Again, we've been saying it from the very beginning. Huge game tonight for both Minnesota and Nebraska as they open up the Big Ten men's basketball tournament. That start time comes, 25 minutes after the
probably
first
roughly
game?
8 o'clock, I'm going to guess, because it goes 5:30.
Right.
So I would guess probably around 8 o'clock maybe.
So they are the late game this evening. And Mike, first, before we get into deeper conversation about this game, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm a little depressed now that you played all those highlights of guys who transferred out and made all conference elsewhere.
Yeah, we couldn't even get a Kalsher reference with his health too, so we apologize, Mike. But you're still
no, it's
one
all
of our
good.
faves.
It's funny because the Gophers, when Richard Patino left, the roster basically left, and one of Kalsher's all Big 12, Marcus Carr's all Big 12, Liam Robbins was the SEC Defensive Player of the Year, first team All SEC, Jamal Mashburn was first team All Mountain West. So there's 4 all conference guys that were on that roster playing elsewhere now, and here the Golden Gophers sit trying to build out of a 2-win Big Ten season and hoping to make a little noise this week. We'll see what happens. But yeah, a little, that's the transfer portal has changed things. And in Minnesota's case, it hasn't been a net positive yet, but he being the head coach, Ben Johnson, will have a chance. He has 3 or 4 open spots at the end of this year. And he'll have to find some bona fide transfers again to help fortify what is a pretty talented freshman class that had to take their lumps a little bit this year.
Mike, the Golden Gophers first lost in OT to Nebraska back in early January and then fell 78-67 on February 25th. And if you're Coach Johnson, what are you telling your team at this moment to try to instill some confidence to close the season out on a high note?
Yeah, I think for them, the good news is they have, there's some tangible evidence that they've played better here in recent weeks and certainly recent games. They had Wisconsin on the ropes at home, probably should have won the game. And then a couple of things went haywire, which that happens with young teams, a couple of late turnovers. They had a couple shots in the air that would have given them the lead, and they ended up losing that by, I think it was 4 points. They were up by 7 at half. And look, Wisconsin is certainly not a juggernaut this year. I think probably as we speak now out of the tournament, but certainly can play its way in. They have they got a little bit of a break getting Ohio State in this, we always refer to it as Weekly and Wednesday here at the Big Ten tournament. Welcome aboard. But they got a bit of a break because Ohio State's net ranking, despite how bad they've been this year, is still pretty good. So that would actually add a resume kind of win on a neutral court for them. So they could still be in. And the Gophers, had them on the ropes. And then they beat Rutgers last Thursday for their second win in just an incredible game. They were down 10 with 1:15 to go, and Minnesota went nuts with some threes and forced a turnover. And all of a sudden you have a walk-off win, and that helped. And they've just, played better. And, you're hoping that's what happens when you're playing for league is old, right? I mean, I was a little joking, but I really like Derek Walker as a player, right? He has been a stud, and he has been a thorn in the Gophers' side this year. In Minneapolis, I'm in Chicago now, of course, but Minneapolis, everyone loves Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards is 4 years younger than Derek Walker, right? I mean, think about that for a second. And so you've got, 18-year-old freshmen trying to guard a 25-year-old, and that's hard. The league is old. And so the last place team is Minnesota. The second last place team is Ohio State. Those are the only two teams in the Big Ten that play 4 freshmen a lot. And that just is the deal. And it'll be interesting to see what happens next year. The league with the transfer portal will still be old. I think it'll always be old. But when you throw in the extra COVID year, you have old players all over the place. Like Northwestern, God bless them. I love them.
Yeah.
They play defense like crazy, and I think they can make some noise because of how they play defense, particularly next week when the tournament starts, because teams, if you haven't seen it, even us, we were sitting courtside the first time at Northwestern, and just being close to how they defend, I'm like, whoa, that can shock a team. So anyway, but they've got a 24-year-old guards who have been around, who quite frankly 3 years ago didn't look like they were going to be that great in the Big Ten. And now they're old playing against young guys, and it's good, and they're good. And so he has to hope that these freshmen continue to progress. I mean, they had to pay the price this year, that's for sure. And then, like I said, add some quality transfers. But it's a long answer to your question. Sorry to drag on. In terms of this week, yeah, the hope is that they've just played a little better lately, and maybe they've got something for the Huskers tonight.
Mike, my son plays on the shoe circuit, and this from the 14 U's to 15 U's. Now this year it'll be 17 U's. We know what happens in Minnesota D1, the grassroots academy. Like, there's good high school basketball played there at a high level. You mentioned some of the freshman guys like Payne. You managed to keep him in state. But they're the DJ Jeffersons, the Trey Hollemans, the guys that get away. It's a big state that plays at a high level. How feasible is it to tighten up the pool of chance?
Man, how much time do you have? Because that's a long answer. That has been, this is my 17th year now doing Gopher basketball, and that is the age-old question. Even going back to Tubby Smith's time, you got a legendary coach, and there was trouble trying to keep home state kids in. He had 1 or 2 really good classes. Diehards will remember. Trevor Mbakwe and Rodney Williams, both from Minnesota. Remember Royce White, who ended up starring at Iowa State, started at Minnesota. He started his career, never played a minute of Gopher basketball. He got in trouble, and then that would take a whole nother. That could be a document 30 for 30 in and of itself. That whole drama, but so there's been times where they have all 4 of these freshmen on the roster are from Minnesota that Ben Johnson has this year, and that is part of why he was hired, quite frankly, because. You look, he's from Minnesota. He played at Minnesota. He was an assistant coach at Minnesota.
Got the great connection
to stay home. And
Minnehaha Academy.
Player got Daniel Oturu to stay home. Yep. He's currently in the G League when he was an assistant here. So I think there was some hope that he had, some great relationships with all of those, AAU teams you mentioned. And there has been some success keeping those guys home. The big question now is with NIL, can Minnesota keep up with that? With some of these kids, they lost a kid to Ohio State, who is going to be a freshman next year. And I don't think there's any doubt NIL played a role in that. And so those things are going to be what they're going to have to work on, figure out ways to raise money, figure out ways to keep those kids home. Patino, if there was a knock on him, that was one of them. Is it the Tyus Jones, the Trey Jones, the Gary Trents, all from Minnesota. They all went to Duke. And, if you just keep a couple of those kids home, Matthew Hurt went to Duke. He was from Minnesota, and So they had a little bit of a pipeline of Minnesotans helping those guys, Tyus Jones' case, having them win the national title. So that's the age-old question, and there's a lot going on. The Gophers have struggled, and so the media, quite frankly, not that the media's job is to help, absolutely not. They have to call it fair, but I think there's been times where the media has, gone out of its way to really paint a negative picture, and that doesn't help either, right? And it's of the Gophers doing, there's no doubt. So how do you?
Oh, looks like we lost Mike. We will try to give him a call back there. If he's around my niece, she probably pressed the end call button because that's her favorite thing to push.
It's interesting because I follow this stuff close just with summer basketball, and if you just get a handful of those guys, he's got D1 Academy, he's got Tyus Jones Elite, he's got Minnehaha. Those are elite level basketball programs. If you just get a few of those guys, you're talking about a totally different conversation in terms of how you view the state school. It's just it's unbelievable in terms of what they've got in terms of high level recruits right there in that state.
We've got Mike back on the line. Mike, sorry we lost you there. Go ahead and just pick up right where you left off.
I mean, Daniel Freitag, who we may fortunately have a chance to play with on our summer team, is another one of those guys, Mike. I mean, two or three guys swing the pendulum quite a bit and pretty easily, don't they?
Yeah, for sure. Sorry about that. I don't know. 32nd floor Hyatt Regency self-service, no good here in Chicago. I don't know. But anyway, I'm looking down at the Chicago River figuring I should have a great signal up here. But yeah, no doubt. Freitag, he might be a football guy. He might try both because he's a great high school football player as well. And so, I don't know where I got cut off. I was talking, all of a sudden looked down and realized no one was listening. So, but yes, there's no question. There's talent. There's no question. There's a lot of good players in Minnesota. NIL will have a factor. The Gophers have to figure that out a little bit better. I think they are behind some of the rest of the league. Certainly around behind some of the blue bloods in terms of that. And like I said, I don't know exactly where I got cut off, but they had a pipeline going to Duke with the Jones brothers, Gary Trent, Matthew Hurt. They're all from Minnesota, and that's hard to recruit against Duke, right? And hard to recruit against some of those blue bloods. But there are a lot of good players, and if Ben Johnson can figure out how to keep them home, this team can be a factor in the Big Ten. There's no doubt about it. And that is, frankly, his charge right now. And then you throw the portal in with it. You got to fortify, and that's what his job will be here, once this season ends and they head into the spring period.
Well, it's a good thing that Coach Johnson was the name you ended with right there, keeping people home, because that's also who Mark Coyle says is the guy still, even though there was regression from last year to this year in regards to just overall record and conference wins and so forth. And of course, you can perhaps contribute most of that to the young roster. And I don't want it to be overlooked, though, that this is still a team with an average scoring margin that's fourth worst among the major conference teams, and a free throw shooting percentage ranking dead last in the country. Now, I'm just pinpointing two little things here, but how quickly do you think this needs to turn around for Coach Johnson and this team to make sure that he can be solidified as the right man at the helm?
Yeah, I think they'll have to have a good year next year. I mean, I can't, obviously make any proclamations, but there's no doubt that, in today's day and age with portals and all this stuff, there's not going to be 7-year windows for coaches to get your team into title contention. So, I don't know if the seat's hot. I mean, I know that, look, not every fan's happy with a 2-win conference record. That's for sure. And you're right. They have to get some shooters in there. They have not shot the ball well. The transfer portal is going to be important. The other thing that, just to throw in, and again, it all sounds like excuses, nobody cares, but Dawson Garcia is their best player. He missed 5 games. Those 5 games they was out, they averaged 54 points. The 6 games since he's been back, they've averaged 71. So, and guess what? He's averaging about 16 points a game as the leading scorer. And that, that's a factor. And I'm not saying they would have won all 5. He was gone. That's not the case. They're 1-4 or 1-5 in the game since. So they have struggled either way, but injuries have also, even young, and then their best player who is old and has been around the block gets hurt, then you're counting on some of those young guys on top of that. So it's they definitely have to shoot better. I think I think coaches sometimes overlook the idea that at the end of the day, the way you win the game is to put the ball in the basket. I think Nebraska, you guys would know more than me. Maybe I can ask you a question because, I look at it, the Huskers were struggling a little middle of the year. The two kids that lose their season because of injury are the highly regarded transfers and very talented players, but neither were shooting the ball well at all. So, Sam Hoiberg comes in and Casey comes in. All of a sudden, baskets and threes start going down, and you're 6-2, right? I mean, It's amazing when all of a sudden 3-point shots start falling at a more consistent level, and the Gophers have not been a good 3-point shooting team. So I think, from a Minnesota standpoint, they have to go get some shooters for sure to help that. And maybe you guys can answer that question on Nebraska in a weird way. Did that, I would never suggest losing talented players to injury would help, but it seems that the team has been shooting much better since that situation unfolded.
Yeah, I think, you know what it is? I always liken it, Mike, and you'll get this, especially if you talk about Minnesota quarterback play. When you get big play potential from quarterbacks, sometimes it can make an offensive coordinator lazy because you wait around sitting on the big play. I think when they lost a lot of their defensive prowess, Coach Hoiberg got back to his roots in terms of offensive play designing and scheming, and those guys trust him. Then I think it kind of helped that offense come along because they were relying so much on getting stops. Bandamel was going to erase a guy. Gary could guard. You could grind teams out. Now they kind of had to get back into, okay, well, let's get on the dry erase board and see what happens. And I think that's helped them. But you mentioned Dawson Garcia, Prior Lake's finest, another Minnesota guy. He took the long way home, Marquette to North Carolina, back to Minnesota. He appears to be comfortable. You mentioned not shooting the three well. That's Cooper, but he and Henley do understand how to post entry. What's the give and take there with playing through Garcia with your guards, knowing you do have to shoot the ball a little bit better against some of these more firepower-laden offensive teams?
Yeah, it's a good question. Now, and Dawson can shoot the three. I mean, he's 6'11", but
I think he made three the other night, didn't he?
He's a finesse guy, really. I mean, he can shoot the three. He'll shoot floaters. He's not a post up bang, back your way into a bucket. Although he can do that, and he's done that. He's good in terms of when he does get close to the basket, he can shoot left-handed, right-handed. He's got a nice touch. So he's got a unique part of his game. I think it's why he's going to be able to play pro hoops because, as you guys know, the NBA game is just different than the college game. And I think his game will translate, actually, because of, some of the skills. And in the big it's hard sometimes to get those skills to translate because it's such a physical league and it's such a possession by possession league. And in Minnesota's case, with the talent level they currently have, they just don't feel like they want to open the throttle all the way. So there's some governor to it, so to speak. And that probably doesn't play into Garcia's strengths, but it's probably better for the team. And if they can add some people that can run, I think they'd like to do that a little bit more. And as you say, maybe, do what Hoiberg and company's done and let's figure out how to score the basketball a little bit better. Even the other night, they let against Wisconsin, they basically singled the post. And so Wall and Crowell each had 20 plus. They had like 54 points in the paint. And Ben Johnson's thought in asking him, why they didn't double and why they just let these dudes back them down was we didn't want to rhythm from three because we don't think we have the firepower to keep up if all of a sudden they hit 7 threes. And if they're hitting twos, we can match them. And it turned into a second half where teams were just going back and forth scoring easy baskets, and Wisconsin ended up on the better end of it. So they're going to need firepower. They've got to add firepower. It's just that simple if they want to take a step next year.
We're talking to Mike Grimm, Gopher Radio Network football and men's basketball play-by-play at Mike Grimm 3 on Twitter. I think going back to a previous point, Nebraska just has found that formula, the formula that works for them despite everything that's happened. All the pieces fell into place, and I mentioned it a little bit earlier on the show, Mike, but it's a little bit of luck, too, for Coach Hoiberg that it all worked out because as much as I gave criticism to Coach Johnson, Fred Hoiberg took a lot of criticism early on this season about if he's going to get that next contract or if he should be the guy of the future. And until you find that formula, it's kind of a question that is left unanswered. But let's talk about this game in particular, because when we talk formula, each team has a plan coming into this game. But if you were coaching both of these teams, what would you say the winning formula would be for Minnesota, and what would you say the winning formula would be for Nebraska?
Well, if you're Nebraska, you just keep doing what you're doing, right? I mean, it is working 6-2 in the last 8. It's really been a fun team to watch. I watched most of the first half and part of that second half of win in Iowa City on TV, of course. And I was getting ready for the Sunday game with Wisconsin. So I went downstairs. The Gophers have their shoot around in the afternoon. I think Iowa was up 7. I walked downstairs. I tape my pregame interview with Ben Johnson after the shoot around. And then, sit around and chat with him a little bit about the game, go back upstairs, walk back into the media room. And I look up and the game finishes. It just got over. And I'm like, holy cow, how'd that happen? And that's how it goes, right? Walker was good. And what's the freshman kid's name that hit all the threes in the second half?
Johnny Lawrence.
That obviously. So I think you just keep doing what you're doing. You just beat Minnesota by 11 days ago in Lincoln. That game was an interesting one. Minnesota never felt out of it, but they never felt in it, if that makes sense. Like they got it within 5 a few times, but I never got the sense that Nebraska felt all that threatened by it. So I think they got to feel good. And in Minnesota's case, and this is, as I said, they lack some firepower. They honestly just have to hope, in my opinion, that Jamison Battle, knocks down 5 threes and Garcia hits 3 threes and Cooper hits a couple. And all of a sudden you've got 11 or 12 threes on the board. And maybe you scored enough points to make a game late. And if you can, you can. And that's, to me, the way the Gophers are going to have to win at this point is just, get hot from 3. And they haven't much. Now they have shot better in the last 4 games from 3. They went like 7 straight games where they're under 30% from 3, which, you just can't win today the way they play games today that way. They've been better lately, and they were 7 of 10 at Maryland in a loss. And so that's, to me, the hope. Battle's got to knock down 5 or 6, and, Garcia's got to knock down 3 or 4 threes. Cooper hit a couple. 1 or 2 down, and if you get into double-digit threes, you got a shot. And unfortunately for the Huskers, they saw that with Michigan State right in the second half of that game. Whenever that was last week,
12 of 17 from behind the arc.
Bring that up because that's, to me, that's got to be the formula for Minnesota. Just hope you hit threes.
Hey, so before we let you go, Mike, is there a chance we get that gritty, that tough-minded, that Minnesota team that we saw against Wisconsin? Because that's like the 5th or 6th game that I've seen. Well, you'll show flashes of a good 34, 35 minutes.
Yeah, no question. So Ben Johnson, when even the day he took the job now, he wants the identity to be kind of the old Clem Haskins throwback, like get down and dirty with it, And when I say dirty, I don't mean dirty basketball, but you know what I mean, gritty. That's the term he uses. And so there are times you see it. I think with the freshmen, it's hard because they want to do that, but they're still not sure where they're supposed to be and how to cover this and how to come out of a double team. And so they're still playing a little tentative, and it's hard to really, unless you're really comfortable to play that. But you're right. And that has been the case even going back to the non-conference. They were at Virginia Tech. They were right there. And then Virginia Tech, boom, in about a 3-minute span goes on a 14-0 run, and all of a sudden you're down and the game's over, And at Purdue, that game was tied back, right before the new year. And Purdue, obviously, at that point was ranked, I think, 1. And it's tied early in the second half, and 4 minutes later, it was like a 19-point game. So they have had these issues with, you're right, they've played in many games 33 minutes of really good basketball, 2 minutes of decent basketball, and then just let things go haywire for a 4-minute stretch, or they go cold, they're 0 for 11. And you know what? I've seen that around the league. Wisconsin had that the other night against the Gophers. They missed 11 straight shots, where I think it's the new kind of basketball sometimes. Iowa had that 2-game stretch where they were like 6 for 100 from 3. I mean, that's not their number, but it was terrible. And so I think sometimes when teams, the way the game's played now with a lot of 3 attempts, you can go cold quick. And if you're a team like Minnesota that can't recover from that, the game can be done because of that 3 or 4 minute stretch. And so that's probably a key tonight, is to try to, keep Nebraska from going on some sort of a 14-2 run at some point.
It wasn't more than 23, so I'll tell you that much. It may not have been 6, but it wasn't more than 20. You were pretty close.
Yeah.
Mike, thanks so much, man. We appreciate your time. Enjoy Chicago, and hopefully we don't lose you on the radio call like we did during the interview.
Yeah, let's hope that we got a nice clean signal. Hopefully you guys was able to hear all right. But yeah, I appreciate it. Always enjoy coming on.
Fantastic,
and
yeah,
it'll
great
be a fun
stuff.
game tonight.
Great
Thanks, Mike.
stuff. Thank you, Mike. Mike Grimm, Gopher Radio Network football and men's basketball play-by-play. We'll also talk more of that with Ron Johnson at 9:45. But coming up next, 2 for You. Give us a call.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hale Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning. Now one of Damon's favorite games and one of Shane's favorite games.
Is this the game where I have to write stuff down?
Well, maybe not so much Shane.
Yes, Shane, this would be the game.
Yes, it's 2 for you.
All right, let's do it.
Wow.
I like the open. A new thing.
Hey, Shane, is this the game where you have to write stuff down?
I don't know. Do I ask that every time?
Every flipping time.
Did I
Hey,
ask
hey,
that
hold on,
5
hold on.
minutes ago?
Let me put down my headset so I can walk across the restaurant to get my notepad.
Is this the thing where do I have to write this down? Man. We're a little spoiled here. We're watching the 4-letter network on one television. We have the state championship, not the finals, state championship on the other television. It is 17-13. Weird. Auburn with a lead in the state tournament. Have we seen this before from a Coach Weeks coach team? Yes, we have. Plenty of time, though. 2:16 left in the second. That's not a football score. That is basketball. I'll take it.
17-13. I'll tell you what, DB, and we're not going to get into this now because we have to play the game. But tomorrow, I'm going to bring something up because this is one of those games that if you're Wahoo, you wish there was what?
A shot clock.
A shot clock.
And if you're Coach Weeks, you're like, figure it out.
Right. Exactly.
He wins a lot of championships playing a certain way.
So we'll talk about that more tomorrow, but let's get into the game now. If you want to play, give us a call, 888-638-4876. I almost forgot the number. I've been out for 5 days, and I almost forgot our phone number there for a sec.
Well, do you remember the first 6 days of the show where I couldn't get it right?
I do.
And
but
then I went to I went to a couple of counties.
Yeah.
And then Spirit of 76. So I remember
Either that or you put it on flashcards and you flipped them over like I used to do
I
when studying history.
I played a mean game of travel with multiplication facts. You used to have to walk up and down the 54, 64, 12, right? Where you just saw the flashcard and you'd move.
Yep.
Dude, that was my game. I know Jamie doesn't think I'm good at math on Twitter.
Did
but
you
I
just say
used to be
you like to play games in order to learn?
I'm competitive.
So you would like
Guess what,
the new
though?
system.
I knew what the desired outcome
Nebraska.
was, though. It was to get smarter.
Yeah,
So it was easy.
Maybe the games at Nebraska right now are.
And I trust him. Some of that stuff I think would make me uncomfortable. So I'm glad that those guys are better at it than I am.
How about this game? Does this game make you smarter? Not so much, but we're going to play it anyway. Again, give us a call. We're giving away gift cards if you're on the phone. If not, we're playing the game.
Crab Rangoon Pizza, Thai wings. What else is the special? Shane, I didn't see the soup this week, but you are vouching for the Crab Rangoon Pizza.
Yeah, and I would always just go with that if you can get it. I mean, it's solid.
Solid.
All right.
I still got 2 pieces left. When I get home, I'm eating the rest of them.
This dude
Two
got
pieces
This
left?
dude got an 8-piece pizza 2 days ago, and he has 2 pieces left.
I ate 2 pieces yesterday. I was full.
Are you not a leftover guy just yesterday?
No, he's a baby eater. How do 8 pieces last you almost 3 days?
It's called, 3 foot
Fasting.
tall.
It's
And
called fasting, right?
Dude, he ate 2 in the first 10 minutes.
3 foot tall and weighing 80
He said,
pounds.
Shane, how'd you like the pizza? It was good, but I slept a lot. This dude has food-induced comas.
Sometimes I do. Sometimes.
Yeah, I don't understand.
Depends on what I'm eating.
I
Maybe
do
like
a
a big
lot.
IHOP meal on a Sunday morning.
That's what you get for going to IHOP.
Baby. Let's play the game. Hey, DB.
Hey, Andrew.
Let's ride it. You and me. And then we'll see how Shane picks it up. You got it?
Yeah.
We ready? Let's go.
I'm ready.
DB, something associated with a cowboy.
Okay.
A clear alcohol.
Okay.
Here's a question a prompt I wish we could have done last week, but Shane was unfamiliar with the coordinators at Nebraska. So name a coordinator at Nebraska.
Okay.
All layups here.
One may be tough.
Are you going to play to my strength here, or are you going to play to your strength?
I'm ready whenever you are.
Fudge.
1918 Auburn with the ball under 20
go
seconds
here.
to
I'm going to go here. Okay. And last, in a horror movie, a place people will hide. Like a common place a person would hide in a horror movie. That's probably a better way to write that.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yep.
Let's go. Hey, DB, name something associated with a cowboy. 3, 2, 1.
Horse.
Cowboy hat. 0 for 1. It's okay. We bounce back with a clear alcohol. 3, 2, 1.
Vodka.
Tequila. Oh, my. You're a tequila guy.
Well, full disclosure, I am, but I also love vodka, and vodka will always be clear. Tequila sometimes has color. Anejo, Reposado. And although clear technically means see-through, I get it. It doesn't mean like water clear. Vodka's always clear. Always.
Don't try to justify that.
Listen, that's
you
my
wrote down
base.
vodka over tequila. Just don't try.
It's my
Don't try to
baby,
justify it.
So therefore, I think
I would have chose vodka.
That is.
Because it's foolproof.
Yeah, you know what's DB proof?
This game.
Tequila. Okay, that's all right. Shake it off. This one I'm worried about. There's no way we got it. A coordinator at Nebraska. 3, 2, 1.
Tony
Satterfield. I was going to write down Tony White, but then I thought, people tend to say offense over defense.
I was going to say White.
We were due. Well, of course you would. We were due because we had gone, I think, 8 for the last 8.
Why'd you write down Tony White?
Because Caleb likes defense.
Oh, see, I thought you wrote it down because that's who I interacted with at Team Jack. And that's who I would have gone with because I have.
Why'd you pick
relationship
Satterfield?
with it. Just because people, whenever you think of a coordinator, it kind of comes in progression. You go offense, defense, special
I will say
teams.
this though. I do think he's the one fans are the most uneasy about if there is an uneasy feeling.
I was uneasy about this game, and
we're getting ready to go over.
In a horror movie, a commonplace people will hide. 3, 2, 1.
The closet.
Under the bed.
It's always the closet.
The closet was number 2.
It's always
no. Think about like in any kidnapping movie, right?
No, kidnapping
Jamie Lee
or
was
horror.
in the closet.
Same thing.
It's not.
Oh my! You're telling me you wouldn't be horrified if somebody was kidnapping you?
No, I'm telling you that Scream isn't taken.
Both are the same to me.
No, they're not. They're not.
I mean, you could
they're
say
not even-
action-packed, suspenseful, thriller.
You could
whatever.
drop all the air quotes you want. Taken will never be in the horror section.
I'm not saying Taken is considered.
Where did she hide in
horror
Taken? Where
movie.
did she hide in Taken?
Under the bed.
Yeah. So
And in the closet.
and Scream.
In the second movie, she hid in the closet.
Yeah. Well, listen to what I'm telling you.
Listen to what I'm saying.
If you weren't such a douchebag, sometimes you'd be a lot easier to talk to.
Whoa!
But what I'm telling you is, a horror movie is not the same as an action movie. I don't care how you spin it. I don't care what you justify in that brain of yours. It's okay to be wrong. A horror movie is not the same as action. You can give me 3 air quotes,
right there.
4 air quotes, 5 air
Doesn't mean
quotes.
that you don't hide under
It
the bed in a
doesn't mean
horror
that
movie.
it's not. That's fine. Say that. The absolutes in your delivery are like, bro, it's okay to be wrong.
Right, but at no point did I say Taken was the first example in
No,
my
you-
mind for
no, but
horror.
you did
But I
say-
did end up saying
listen.
I did end up saying what you said.
Hey,
but I
Jenny,
didn't start there.
Jenny Benning.
Hey,
You
hey,
can
hey,
rationalize it any way you want to. At the end of the day,
just goes to show
you
that
said
Jenny, great person.
she's fantastic, but she will rationalize strange things. You uttered the phrase "same thing." They're not the same thing.
Okay, Dr. Observant.
Or
a guy that pays attention to detail.
That too. That too. Okay, I'm with you there.
It's a different kind of.
I'll own that one, but I'm still on the under the bed train.
But I got a
don't think
question.
that's a
Though.
bad one.
I have a question though. This is important.
Hit me with your question.
Because we were 8 for 8. Kindred spirits.
Yeah, not great.
Both DBs. Do you try to have his? I'm funny. Do you try to have as fewer words as possible? Because do you know why I didn't say cowboy hat? Because it was multiple words, and I didn't think you'd think of it.
I would have said hat.
Do you know where I didn't say under the bed? Because it's more words.
I get that.
Does that make sense?
I'm with
I
you.
feel like that's the human cheat code for when we do this next time if Trent doesn't play, because Trent apparently is the only one that likes us.
Hey, I think he just likes the food at Hale Varsity Club. He just gets a ton of gift cards.
But what scares me is I'm on the same page as Shane. That's not good either. Shane said, "Well, I'd have said hat. I'd have said closet or boots. I'd have said closet."
Yeah, he was.
He
wouldn't have said Satterfield or White.
Maybe I'm trending in the wrong direction.
Ron Johnson up next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Oh, Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Why you give me that face?
Because that was like the greatest off air. I had to get up and walk
It
around.
all started with something I read on our YouTube.
Was it an Amazing Daniel?
I don't know. It's Daniel Burns, Amazing Daniel.
Because if it's the Amazing Daniel, you guys both have one thing in common. You're always right.
I'm not always right. No, that is completely false. I am not always right. And I will own when I'm not right.
Okay.
But I'll tell you what.
I kind of want to ask Ron on a humbug.
What ticks me off.
It's fine.
What ticks me off is when somebody says, like, tries to dig deeper through an answer.
I'm just telling you, tequila isn't always clear.
And
vodka is.
But that's not I didn't ask for something that isn't always clear.
Are we not seeing your
if
delivery?
If something is clear in some form of the word, it counts. I don't need to be told that it isn't always clear.
So the people that are, we're all wrong and you're right.
We're not even going there, DB.
We're all wrong. We're all wrong, and you're right.
I don't need to be told that good tequila isn't clear, and that tequila could be a bad answer there. This is something that DB drinks all the time I'm around him. So I'm playing to his strength, and tequila, the ones that he drinks around me are clear.
Except for the good reposado.
It's ridiculous.
You gonna be all right?
It's a ridiculous thing to
say. Are you gonna be all right?
I mean, what did I tell you? Like, if I asked for something that
very
not all windows are see-through.
Well, nobody's gonna say stained glass.
But if you have a tinted window, a dark tinted window, you can't see through that. But if I ask for something see-through, more times than not, you'd say a window. It's like the same thing with alcohol. Okay, I'm gonna get off my soapbox.
I think we better. Shane, do we have Ron?
Is Ron in? Hey, Ron, what's going on, man? I don't know if you enjoyed hearing that. I don't know.
Hey, listen, Ron, my man is
saying.
so particular. He's mad. If I said, "Hey, Ron Johnson, name a clear liquor," what would Ron Johnson say?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is vodka.
Oh, Shane, we got to give him some audio. Do we have him here?
He's up. I just don't have audio from him.
Oh, all right. Now we gotta get him
one, two.
He's worth listening to. He's hilarious. We've got to get Ron some audio.
1, 2, 3, 4.
How are we feeling? Ron, can you hear us okay?
I can hear you guys.
Okay, so I can see him talking, but we can't hear him.
Yeah, and I could hear him acknowledge that he heard us.
1, 2.
Is there a button that is pushed that has him muted over there, Shane?
There is not.
So what's different between him and the other 4 guests we had today?
I don't know. I'll call him.
Okay. Now we can't be cutting into Ron's time. We need full Ron Johnson.
Look at him. He just picked up his phone.
Because he knows. I could talk to this dude for 3 days, and we can't get it for 15 minutes.
Yeah, well.
Shane, help me out. Call him back.
You didn't want to hear his answer to the clear
He was
alcohol
gonna.
question.
I know what he was gonna
You
say.
didn't want to hear the answer, which is why Shane kept him muted. I get it, Shane.
Are you? I just want to know if you're gonna be okay.
Are you gonna be okay? I knew that was coming.
I'm calling your mother. And she's like, "Oh yeah, that's the son I raised. That is the son I raised.
Irrational.
Can lose his mind at the drop of a hat." Shane, are we ready or no? No, we're not ready. This is really going to pee me off. I'm going to pull an Andrew and I'm going to be upset.
Oh, right now in this segment, pull an Andrew. I'm the only person on earth that can be peed off. I'm the only one.
Welcome back, man.
I can hear you guys.
Different kind of way to raise your tone.
It's a good.
Ron, can you hear us okay? I hope we can hear you.
I can
Please,
hear you
baby
guys.
Jesus. Gosh, we
Got
can't.
nothing, Shane.
Shane, you're killing me.
It's probably one little button that isn't pushed.
Where's
for
Sasha
some
when I
reason.
need her? Behind every inadequate man is a smarter woman.
Yeah.
Shane, no offense. No offense. Did I say inadequate? I apologize. You don't understand how bummed I am. Like that is, he's hilarious.
Ron, I mean, I wouldn't know because I can't hear him.
Well, we can't either. But as you can see, if you take a look at our screen, did you see the Steelers helmet in the back?
I did not miss it.
Should we try it again? Nope.
Yep. Here you go.
Oh boy, what did your mom say? DB is correct. That is the son I've raised. I'm telling you, she keeps it 100. Like right, wrong, or I could tell just by being around her. All right, so we got him on the phone. Ron, good morning. How are you?
I'm good.
Thank the Lord, man. It's not the same being able to see you laugh and make fun of me, but I'm gonna take what I can.
Envision it.
How you feeling this morning?
I'm good, man. Can't complain. We'll have to make sure we get another one on here when I can get this audio.
Yeah. So we've been talking a little Minnesota football, a little Minnesota basketball. You asked me a great question on your show. What would I do differently with Minnesota basketball? And I said, keep some of the young studs in state. You guys are playing 4 freshmen tonight against Nebraska. What's the consensus on Coach Johnson right now? Do you have a good feel for that?
Well, I mean, Ben's a friend of mine, so it's tough. I'm going to be honest. Like, when you know somebody, when you went to school around the same time, like him, myself, Lindsey Whalen, we all played around the same time. They're both younger than me. So it is tough. It's tough when you're a friend of a guy. He's been on my show. But this is where I go with it. So men's basketball, honestly, I feel like has had like a red letter stain on the program ever since like 1998. You go back to Clem Haskins, and it was questionable for a lot of Minnesotans. And if you look at some of these parents who, I don't want my kid to be around anything dangerous, or I don't want my kid to be, and not them knowing their kid is out smashing pumpkins and breaking windows. Like, I think a lot of parents overthink the college experience and think, oh, my kid has to go to this place, or my kid. So I think until Minnesota can start to really lock down a lot of these in-state recruits, I think that's going to be the first issue. And then the second issue is the NIL. Minnesota has, I want to say, 19 Fortune 500 companies in the downtown area or outskirts. And so when you have that many Fortune 500s, that many CEOs, that many big-time donors, you have to find a way to be able to put money into these kids' pockets for coming to your school. And it doesn't have to be like, here's $1 million, come play. It can be set up to say, look, if you're a starter, you're going to make X. If you're a, whatever, you're going to make this. If you do this many appearances for my company, you're going to make this.
Sounds a lot like Creighton.
And when you can.
Creighton's is so good, Ron. Like, I'll walk you behind the scenes at a different time. That sounds a lot like Creighton's model. It's pretty slotted, pretty self-explanatory. There's a low and a high, and there's all things that everybody gets. Like, it's way good.
Yeah, and that's the key. Like, if you have a Target, you have a Best Buy, you have a Cargill, you have 3M, you have General Mills, you're telling me you can't use the point guard, the starting point guard, number 1 point guard in the country to say, hey, dude, you will be the face of Target, and we will have you shoot jumpers or make passes into a Target, and you're going to be the spokesperson for Target. You're going to get paid X. Target's already paying for these commercials. They're already paying these people to be on their billboards. Why not pay your own local college? Of a quarterback. I mean, imagine a quarterback throwing a football into a Target. The actual circle Target logo with, chalk on it. And he's going to, a la old Peyton Manning, from the Pro Bowl, and see how many targets he hits. It's just too easy. And again, until these companies realize that, granted, they're like, look, people are going to go to Target regardless of who we put as our sponsor. But it's like, also, wouldn't it be fun to have, your school, your team, your area be number one because of your business?
We're talking to Ron Johnson, host of the Ron Johnson Show at 3Ron Johnson on Twitter. Ron, I know you're an NFL guy too, and we got into this conversation earlier on about the use of the franchise tag and the situation.
Yeah, vodka. Vodka is the answer for clear liquor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Where did that come from?
Hey, that's listen.
I
We're
just
like,
wanted to make sure I got that out there.
hey,
That's what it meant.
thank you. I
doesn't mean that tequila is a wrong answer.
Hey, this is what we're dealing with, RJ. This is what we're dealing with. Let me ask you something real quick before we move to football, though. With the expectation level in basketball, does it have anything to do with like having Minnie Haha and Tyus Edney and D1 who like you have some really good you have Freitag right in your backyard. Does it have anything to do with the fact that you play such good summer basketball?
I'd say yes. I mean, you look at the circuits and the guys that travel when they're serious about this AAU.
Khalid El-Amin is in your backyard.
Yeah, and again, I mean, you got Khalil Amin who doesn't have any ties to Minnesota. You know, so when these kids are getting recruited, he doesn't care where they go.
Hey, Ron, you know, to follow up on where I was going with that question, you know, as you're searching and franchising tag, whether it's a running back or a quarterback or whoever it is, you know, you're looking for a signal caller, and that's the Golden Gophers right now. They're trying to find a new signal caller for next season. We saw him a bit last season, and he found himself in the back of the pack in most Big Ten quarterback preseason rankings, but that's Kayak Manis. But do you see him taking the snaps day one, or do you think spring presents a unique opportunity for some good quarterback competition?
So the one thing I'll say about Ethan Kaligmanis is he's probably the best arm talent Minnesota's seen in a while, but the difference is he's not as strong yet. Like he still has a kid body, and he's a late bloomer. Like you've seen some college kids show up and they're built like Zeus already. Well, this kid isn't there yet. I truly believe in the next year or two, if he doesn't transfer, because again, they're getting more and more top kids to commit to Minnesota, and that's going to always be the issue moving forward with college football. Is the free, like, oh, I can just transfer because I don't want to be here anymore. And that's going to be tough for like a school like Alabama. They could do that year in and year out. They're going to recruit the top. They're going to tell those kids, hey, just sit back. You sit back for 2 or 3 years. You start for me for 2 years. You'll be in the NFL. Well, Minnesota doesn't have that. You know, they don't have that pedigree of like, hey, like running back, yes. Receiver, maybe.
Secondary's legit.
Secondary's legit. Secondary, same thing. You know, Antoine Winfield Jr. You know, you got Terrell Smith now in the draft. You got Jordan Houghton. You go way back to I just had Eric Murray on, Brian Body Calhoun. So yeah, they've had corners, receivers, offensive linemen. Like they constantly are putting offensive linemen in the league. Last year too. This year they'll have John Michael Schmidt, #1 center in the draft. But quarterback. I mean, I can't remember the last time they haven't had a drafted quarterback since God knows when. And so when you think about that, that's going to be the problem. And PJ's going to have to start that now. Like he's going to have to groom Ethan. And Ethan is really good. Like he makes some really good throws. He has a real strong arm. His biggest issue is going to be technique. Like he does some weird things, like against Nebraska. He made some weird like arm pumps, some motions that he's going to have to work on. But once he works on it, this kid will be good.
Hey, let me ask you real quick. We got a couple minutes left. Can the co-coordinator thing work under a guy that's as specific about the vision as PJ Fleck?
I personally think no. I always hate the co. Now, there's the thing. Internally, if the co-tag is just to get money to another guy, because when you become coordinator, you add that to your resume. It adds money to the pocket, and the university has to pay that person for that title. And then also that's a resume builder to move on maybe to another job, have an opportunity to be a head guy somewhere else, have an opportunity to maybe move to the NFL as a receivers coach or coordinator. So there's always rhyme for the reasons behind what PJ Fleck does. Like he doesn't do it for just, you know, poops and giggles. You know what I mean? Like he's gonna really I didn't know what I could say on here.
Yeah, we're not quite on the RJ podcast yet. I knew what was coming.
I don't know though. I mean, last segment we did drop a word that we questioned later on.
Oh no, we could say the D-bag.
But you know, PJ is calculated. You know, so I truly believe internally there's already a 5-page like scenario of like this is your role, this is your role. You're the play caller. You're the this. You're the install guy. You're the whatever. So PJ has it. So if there's anybody that can pull it off, I'd say PJ Fleck. The spot I didn't like, and let's go to the Minnesota Vikings. They had it for a couple years with Mike Zimmer. He named his son co-coordinator along with Andre Patterson. I didn't agree with it. Andre Patterson had been in the NFL for 17 years. His son had been in the NFL for about 5 years. And so when you think about making those two co-coordinators, it did nothing for either of their resumes because Mike Zimmer was the play caller. So it's all about what the reason is behind it.
In 2 years, real quick, 40 seconds. In 2 years, will PJ Fleck be at the University of Minnesota?
Yeah, I think PJ Fleck will be there for 5 years. And this is the reason why. PJ lives in Edina, Minnesota, which is one of the richest neighborhoods in Minnesota. He has a boat. He has a house out there. I mean, he loves Minnesota unless the NFL comes calling, say, hey, we want you to be the head coach of the Miami Dolphins or something like that. Like, I don't see him jumping to another program because it becomes a lateral move from him. I mean, unless Nick Saban, walks away and he gets a call from Alabama, I just don't see it. You look at the level of player that's starting to come here, the level of recruit that's starting to come here. You look at the draft this year, the past couple years with Rashad Bateman, Daniel Faalele. I think PJ is happy here. And again, his son just started high school here as well in Edina, Minnesota. So there's not a lot of places where you can really go raise a family and be like, look, I enjoy being here. And the Gophers continue to pay him more money. I think that's the other key. They're willing to match what he's worth. And I think that's the other side of it.
Ron, we appreciate your time.
Man,
Thanks so much. We'll try
so
again
good.
soon.
So good, buddy. We're going to make this kind of a more of a frequent thing if you're okay with that.
Yeah, let me know. Yeah, we'll have to get on early and make sure the sound and video. There's a button somewhere.
It's somewhere.
I'll make sure to have my dark tequila on the set next time too.
Get him, Ron.
Ron.
Get him,
Ron. You know what's funny, man? I drive the show, so we'll see if we bring you on.
Hey, he keeps telling himself that. Hey, we appreciate you, Ron.
No, appreciate you guys.
Hey, thanks, Ron. And thank you all for listening today. What a first day back after a
I hope you really
an
don't believe that.
extended weekend. What a great first day.
Yeah, that.
Why?
You just keep driving. Oh shoot.
Nah, you wanna take over the wheel?
I got no problems.
You want to take
no
it there?
Problems.
You better hit the eject.
Oh man. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you tomorrow.